Knights and ancient castles. Dragons soaring across moonlit skies. Witches whispering forbidden curses while magic reshapes kingdoms stained by war and ambition. Humanity has always been fascinated by fantasy worlds. But sometimes, one question quietly lingers in the shadows. Did we create those legends, or did we once belong to them? My name is Kyle Aiven. In my previous life, I was an ordinary man. But after crossing into another world, I awakened as a pureblood vampire born within one of the oldest hidden bloodline families on the continent. For nearly a century, I lived surrounded by luxury, power, and immortality. Every day was the same endless cycle of etiquette, politics, and tedious lectures from ancient elders obsessed with preserving tradition. While others dreamed of such a privileged life, I slowly grew numb to it. Until one day, I finally decided I had enough. Encouraged by my older sister Caitlyn, I left my family behind and traveled across multiple continents to the chaotic metropolis known as Coralthorn City. There, beneath the surface of nobles, merchants, and adventurers, I began building my own underground intelligence empire while secretly pursuing forbidden knowledge, transcendent power, and the freedom to shape my own destiny. Everything was going perfectly. Until I encountered a ridiculously stubborn paladin who refused to stop chasing me. And from that moment onward, my peaceful plans completely fell apart. This is the story of Kyle Aiven, a vampire noble reborn into a dangerous fantasy world. Tired of immortality without meaning, he sets out to create a new future with his own hands. As kingdoms clash, ancient races awaken, and hidden conspiracies spread across the continents, Kyle slowly begins changing the balance of the world itself. Not as a hero. Not as a savior.
Hey everyone, I sincerely appreciate your support. If you enjoy my audiobooks, I would be truly grateful if you could subscribe to the channel. And if you'd like to support even further, you're welcome to become a Patreon member, where you can access audiobooks of novels as long as they are freely available on the internet. Your kindness and support mean so much. Thank you.
After sending off the last client, Kyle was just about to stand when a familiar aura reached him. The firmly shut wooden door creaked open once more. Cloaked in black robes and wearing a mask like the others, yet Kyle recognized her instantly. Caitlyn. You. Kyle was genuinely startled. His elder sister, who had always kept to herself running a grocery shop in a remote town, what was she doing in this den of dragons and snakes? Before he could finish, he noticed something wrong with her condition. You're injured. No, your origin has been excessively depleted. Kyle immediately traced along her causal threads and discovered she was in love. Worse, she had consumed her origin to heal the other party's injuries. What? Surprised? Caitlyn knew well how powerful her younger brother was. Not only was he exceptionally gifted, he was also a rare talent among the blood race, born with extraordinary abilities. How could I not be surprised? Kyle flashed to her side and grabbed her arm. A 150-year-old ant nibbling on 18-year-old fresh grass. Sister, are you planning to reform him with motherly love? You'd rather drain your origin than give him the embrace? Seems holy water didn't burn your brain out, it just marinated your love-struck one instead. Want me to brew you a corpse-dissolving potion to rinse it clean? Though his mouth was merciless, Kyle did not delay. He seized Caitlyn's icy wrist, and a faint dark red glow bloomed across his palm. A vast, pure tide of blood energy, brimming with powerful vitality, flowed into her with the warmth of a gentle stream. The replenishing surge nearly made Caitlyn cry out in exhilaration. Fortunately, the remnants of her rationality kept her biting her lip tightly. Within moments, the origin she had lost was restored and even overflowed slightly. Caitlyn was only at the Viscount level, merely a bit stronger than an elite professional. For Kyle, this amount of blood energy was trivial, he could replenish it after a few meals. You've got guts. With your origin so depleted, you still dared come here. Afraid the witch hunters won't notice a walking bounty. Well, I've got you, don't I? My genius little brother. Caitlyn clung to his arm and swayed coquettishly, completely rid of her earlier weakness. So what exactly is going on between you and that brat? Kyle was genuinely curious. Of course, he could simply look, but that would be troublesome and draining. Glimpsing fragments was fine, treating it like a full movie would leave him a dried corpse. What else could it be? Caitlyn released his arm. Beneath the mask, her pale cheeks flushed faintly. That boy worked in my shop. A few thugs came to extort protection money. He couldn't stand it and fought them. He was only 14 then. Caitlyn covered her mouth and giggled. The image of that beansprout thin boy, face swollen like a pig's head, seemed to hover before her. Brat! Instead of hiding behind the counter, you run out playing hero. Caitlyn carefully applied ointment to the boy's wounds. Satisfied now? Humph. Sister's such a good person, what right do they have to bully you? The boy winced in pain but stubbornly held his chin high. He would never forget that snowy night when Caitlyn opened her door, gave them frozen orphans hot soup and bread, and a place to stay. Oh. Still talking back. Caitlyn pressed a little harder with the ointment. But the expected cry never came. Looking up, she saw the boy gritting his teeth, eyes blazing with stubborn conviction. Sister. Sister. A halfling bard came to the tavern today. His stories were amazing. The boy excitedly recounted tales of paladins slaying vampires, exterminating werewolves, and battling evil dragons, completely oblivious to Caitlyn's darkening expression. You brat. All you know is listening to stories. The shelves aren't even wiped clean today, you itching for a beating. Caitlyn grabbed a broom and chased him, the wooden floor thudding beneath their feet. Humph. You old woman who doesn't understand a man's passion. My ambition is to uphold justice and purge evil from the world. I'll become the greatest paladin. Even with lumps on his head, he kept shouting as he ran. Oh. I'll show you upholding justice. Thwack. Yow. I'll show you purging evil. Thwack. Yow. I'll show you becoming a paladin. Thwack. Smack. The boy stumbled and fell flat on the floor. Maybe that was a bit too hard. Caitlyn quietly hid the cracked broom behind her back. Bit by bit, I fell for the silly boy. At first, I only saw him as a younger brother. Then a few wolf cubs came into town. That idiot even dared to stand in front of me with a pitchfork. Caitlyn's voice softened. He was trembling all over, eyes screaming, "Sister, run." So foolish it warmed my frozen heart. Those wolf cubs were quite strong. Though I intervened in time, he was still scratched. To prevent infection from wolf poison, I consumed a great deal of origin to purge the toxin from him. So he knows you're a vampire? Kyle listened with relish. This plot was far better than any bard's tale. Yes. I didn't hide it from him. Caitlyn smiled. I wanted to see how this would-be paladin dedicated to upholding justice would react. Besides, I was already exposed. I was prepared to part ways. And? Kyle leaned forward expectantly. Caitlyn removed her mask. Her exquisite face bloomed into a sweet, blissful smile. He froze, just staring at me for a long time. Then, he slapped himself several times and looked me in the eyes, saying, "If becoming a paladin means becoming sister's enemy, I'd rather die." Hiss. Kyle could imagine the devastating impact of those words. From Caitlyn's account, he could tell the boy possessed the qualities to become a paladin: courage, perseverance, and a pure belief in justice. And yet such a boy was willing to abandon his lifelong dream for her. Well, Kyle admitted, the kid's got something. So you agreed to date him? You didn't come to ask me to persuade those old fossils in the family to approve you marrying a human boy, did you? And since he gave up being a paladin, why not just give him the embrace? Of course not. Caitlyn rolled her eyes and hopped onto the table. He's willing to abandon his dream for me, how could I let him down? The embrace is even less possible. That would truly sever his path. So, little brother, do you know any reliable paladins? Preferably one whose brain isn't completely rigid. I need a teacher for him. Cough cough, cough, cough dash. Kyle nearly choked to death on his own saliva. Are you both insane? Am I your entertainment? Enough nonsense. Do you have someone suitable or not? Caitlyn crossed her arms and glared at him arrogantly. Kyle sighed helplessly. If he refused, his thoroughly love-struck sister would surely find another way, and that would almost certainly end badly. At least now she still had the sense to come to him. Keeping her under his watch was the safest course. Since she wanted a teacher for her little boyfriend, fine. What was the name of that damned bastard who had chased him for 3 months? O'Brien? Damn it! Kyle cursed inwardly. Why did his causal threads feel increasingly tangled with that fellow? Fine, fine. I surrender. Kyle waved irritably and stood up in resignation. Let's go. I'll meet this precious little boyfriend of yours who'd rather die. I want to see what's so special about him that he's charmed my sister into losing her brain. North City's slum district, territory of the Lard Gang. Inside a remote inn at the end of a dim alley, a somewhat lean young man with bright black eyes stood by the window, his expression tense and complicated as he stared at the unfamiliar street below, heavy with the smell of rust and pig fat. Sister said she went to find her younger brother. I wonder if she's found him yet. Everything here was utterly different from the quiet little town where he had grown up. Noisy. Prosperous. Crowded. And extremely dangerous. Not long ago, while he and his sister had been hiding inside the room, tremendous roars had echoed across the sky again and again. Only long after the terrifying pressure and sounds of battle ceased had they finally dared to breathe normally. Stupid boy. Now you know how dangerous this world is, don't you? Remember, until I come back, you are not to step outside this door even half a step. Do you hear me? Her repeated warnings before leaving still echoed in his ears. Dean had never imagined that one day he would truly plunge headfirst into the fantastical world described by bards, a world of dazzling strangeness that had once existed only in his dreams. Growing up in a remote town, the strongest person he had ever seen was the captain of the town guard, a formal tier warrior. The man could shatter a half-human tall boulder with his bare hands, whirl his spear with such force that gusts of wind followed its arc, splintering wooden stakes several meters away. Yet even such a warrior had been torn to pieces within moments by several towering werewolves that had suddenly stormed into town. The stench of blood and entrails filled the street. The once peaceful town dissolved into screams and cries. Watching the werewolves draw closer, Dean's body trembled as he pulled a pitchfork from a haystack. Just as he summoned the last of his courage, ready to trade his life for even a sliver of escape time for his sister, he witnessed something beyond his wildest imagination. One werewolf crossed dozens of meters in the blink of an eye and appeared before him. Its sharp claws slashed downward. Before he could comprehend what had happened, his body was yanked backward. The claws shattered his pitchfork into fragments, leaving only 2 shallow gashes across his chest. Crack, rip. The sound of bone breaking and flesh tearing echoed. He slammed heavily into the wall of the shop behind him. Before losing consciousness, he saw a familiar figure toss a massive, blood-drenched werewolf head into a patch of weeds by the roadside. The golden eyes he knew so well had turned a vivid crimson. Then darkness claimed him, accompanied by the thunderous crash of a werewolf's corpse hitting the ground. Crackle, crackle. Amid the popping of burning wood, Dean slowly regained consciousness. Struggling upright, he realized he was lying inside a cave, cushioned by soft hay. The wounds on his chest had been stitched and bandaged. Nearby, a pot simmered over a campfire, releasing a mouth-watering aroma. Through his still blurry vision, he saw a familiar figure sitting by the flames, her silver-white hair radiant in the firelight. You're awake. Caitlyn gently stirred the small pot with a carved wooden stick. Steam rose in thick curls, carrying the rich scent of meat. Without turning around, she said irritably, "Next time you try playing hero again, I'll toss you into this pot and stew you." "Ah, forget it. There probably won't be a next time." Dean opened his mouth but found his throat too dry to produce sound. As if anticipating this, Caitlyn turned and handed him a bowl of warm soup. Green wild vegetables floated atop the broth. "Drink. It won't taste as good once it's cold." She kept her face stern as she stared at the foolish boy she might never see again. Dean accepted the bowl but did not drink. His chaotic thoughts churned violently. Caitlyn did not urge him. Instead, she sat casually beside him, resting her chin on one hand and said lightly, "Stop overthinking it, my dear Lord Paladin. I'm the vampire you're so determined to uphold justice against." Vampire, vampire, vampire. The word struck his mind like a hammer, making his ears ring. Scenes of their life together unfolded before him. The orphanage closing. The older brothers and sisters setting off with young Dean, destination unknown. A winter night of howling wind and snow. Frail figures huddled in a street corner, the youngest him shielded by frostbitten hands. When despair was about to swallow them whole, a creaking wooden door slowly opened. Inside the grocery shop, pine logs crackled warmly in the hearth. The children, wrapped in blankets, sat in a circle, clutching steaming bowls of soup. Silver-haired sister sat among them, her voice gentle as water, telling tales of glowing foxes in the forest, whales crossing mountains and seas, and countless stories they had never heard before. Under dim candlelight, her slender figure in a plain dress stitched torn clothes in the shadows. If a child kicked off a blanket in sleep, she would quietly set down her needle to tuck them in again. Study days were the hardest. Red, ruler-struck hands were held tightly in her cool ones as she guided his fingers again and again through letters traced in sand. Every sound, every stroke she taught them patiently, countless times. When spring blossoms bloomed, she would don a loose black robe and lead them to the river like sparrows freed from a cage. As time passed, the older children left one by one, grateful and grown, until only he remained. Each departing brother or sister would remind him, "Be a man, protect sister." He had promised each of them solemnly, engraving those words deep into his heart. When the memories returned to the bowl of soup in his hands, his fingers slackened. The fragrant broth spilled across the ground. He struck his own cheeks repeatedly, trying to force clarity into his mind. After a long, long while, he finally fell silent. His eyes burned red as he looked at the woman before him, his most beloved and respected family, without equal. To hell with Paladin. Anyone who sought to harm her would have to step over his corpse. If becoming a paladin means becoming sister's enemy, I'd rather die. Just as Dean remained immersed in that heart-rending memory, a teasing yet sincerely approving voice suddenly sounded behind him. "Wow. Not bad, kid. I approve of you." Dean's hair stood on end. He spun around abruptly only to find that, at some unknown moment, two figures had appeared in the Crampton room. Kyle and Caitlyn had actually arrived long ago. Kyle simply wanted to see what kind of boy had stolen both his sister's heart and brain. Using a blend of mental illusion and causal guidance, he had drawn Dean's thoughts back through his memories with Caitlyn while simultaneously projecting those scenes into a crystal ball for his sister to watch. The snowy rescue. The warm years of growth. Their playful quarrels. The werewolf attack. Each memory was woven with pure, blazing emotion. What a touching story. If we sold this to a bard, it'd be a bestseller. No better I keep it and publish it myself. I could make a fortune. Kyle muttered aloud. Bonk. Caitlyn flicked his forehead hard. Can you forget about your damned money for once? And at a time like this? Eyes red and brimming with tears, she shoved her brother aside without ceremony. She rushed forward and wrapped her arms tightly around Dean, her voice choked yet firm beyond doubt. Stupid boy, don't talk about dying ever again. Kyle rolled his eyes. So once you've got a sweetheart, your real brother becomes adopted, huh? Brat. Just you wait. I'll make you suffer for this. West of the city, the Adventurers and Merchants District. Inside a 3-story orphanage building covering 200 square meters. The mottled yet tidy walls, a small courtyard swept spotlessly clean, 5 sets of tables and chairs, and several swings and seesaws already worn and old. This was the first scene O'Brien saw when he walked into the orphanage. Sir, the children are still asleep. Do you need me to wake them? Zack looked somewhat nervously at the powerful man who had stood motionless ever since entering the orphanage. No need. Before coming in, O'Brien had already clearly taken in the heartbeat of everyone here. His purpose in coming was merely to confirm the authenticity of the situation. Aside from a few children in weaker health, most were quite healthy, which showed they had been well cared for. That was enough. Tell me about your matter. What task did that vampire assign you? O'Brien sat down on the bench in the courtyard and closed his eyes to ease the fatigue of the long day. Sir, please wait a moment. I'll prepare some tea for you first. Zack hurried into the kitchen on the south side of the courtyard, took out some tea leaves and utensils, then hastily heated water. After placing the brewed tea on the table before O'Brien, he cautiously continued. Sir, it's like this. That intelligence merchant told me that about 30 nautical miles southeast of Coral Reef Island, on the seabed, 2 boxes of magical scrolls from the silver scale were buried. But in that stretch of sea, there's an enormous number of ghost-eyed sharks. That lord told me to recount my entire situation to you truthfully, and then you would help us. That's all the information I currently know. Zack poured out in one breath all the information he had obtained from Kyle. Oh, right. He suddenly slapped his forehead, took out the grimy cloth pouch from his chest again, and carefully placed the 3 dim magic crystals onto O'Brien's table. This is the consultation fee that Lord returned, and it's also all the money I have right now, to be used to purchase salvage equipment. After speaking, Zack held his breath and quietly waited for O'Brien's reply. O'Brien slightly opened his eyes, his gaze lingering briefly on Zack's tense face. Since he had already confirmed there was no problem, he naturally would not go back on his word. Then make preparations to set sail as soon as possible. Inform me before departure. I'll be staying at the Rhino Tavern these few days. You should be able to find me there at night. O'Brien rose and vanished from the courtyard as if teleporting, without any intention of exchanging pleasantries with Zack. Zack stared blankly at the still steaming teacup, unable to recover for a long while. When he confirmed that this hope capable of saving the team, saving this home had finally found its footing, the exhaustion from days of running about, the grievances and pressure, seemed to erupt all at once. Zack collapsed onto his back in the courtyard as if his bones had been pulled out of him, indescribable relief and joy washing over him. His eyes could no longer hold back the tears. He laughed and cried at the same time. After a while, thunderous snores echoed through the courtyard. With Kyle, the local snake, around, Caitlyn and her little boyfriend Dean naturally no longer needed to stay in that cramped inn. Kyle directly brought them to a secluded villa in the wealthy district of the eastern city. This was his largest foothold here. If O'Brien were here, he would surely curse Kyle as a liar full of nonsense. And Kyle would certainly curse right back. A dignified grandmaster, earl, blacksmith, dressing like a beggar every day, what was he pretending to be poor for? Exquisite sculptures, magnificent magical fountains, and paintings hanging along the corridors that were clearly the work of masters. Such an extravagantly luxurious villa, perhaps the entire Coral Thorn city could hardly find a few places that could rival it. The spacious villa had no servants or butlers at all. It was entirely maintained by expensive alchemical puppets, so there was no need to worry about being disturbed. My dear little brother, is this where your sister will live from now on? Caitlyn's eyes sparkled as she hugged Kyle tightly. Stop pretending. If you liked living in a place like this, you wouldn't have run off to that remote little town. The family owns so many properties, pick any one at random and it wouldn't be worse than this, and it would be much safer. Kyle shook his head helplessly. But since you're here this time, just stay at ease. I'll regularly send over fresh plasma. I guarantee it'll be 100 times better than the inferior stuff you drank in that backwater place. Don't worry, it's all bought with real gold and silver. I hold shares in all the major hospitals and clinics in the city. Seeing his sister looking as if she was afraid of being misunderstood by Dean, Kyle could barely stand to watch. Women in love were truly beyond saving. Take these too. Kyle handed Caitlyn a magic bracelet and a pitch-black wooden token. This isn't like your remote countryside. There are countless hidden experts here, even I can't see through them all. This bracelet can effectively reduce the suppression sunlight has on a vampire's physique, and it can also conceal dark aura and disguise appearance. As long as it's not some freak like a paladin, even a witch hunter standing face to face would find it hard to detect your vampire identity. This wooden token is the credential of my intelligence merchant identity. I'm fairly well known here, and the strong here will more or less give me some face. Besides that, you can use it to seek help at any shop in the city bearing the silver moon mark. It'll also keep blind forces from harassing you. After arranging matters for his sister, Kyle turned his gaze to Dean, who had long since grown dizzy from looking around. The young man, who had never seen the world, was staring at the luxurious decorations with a face full of curiosity. Yet no matter how curious he was, he only craned his neck to look and did not think of reaching out to touch anything. It seemed his sister's education of him had been quite successful. What was this? A child groom? But since he wanted to become a son-in-law of the Aiven family, there was plenty he would need to learn. Kid, if you don't want your future paladin mentor to beat you to death, you'd better wipe that worthless look off your face. Dean quickly composed his expression and scratched his head. Seeing all this for the first time indeed struck him strongly, but whether he liked it that much was another matter. He preferred that small town nestled against mountains and water, and its peaceful, tranquil atmosphere. This empty, desolate villa devoid of human presence made him feel very insecure. Especially those exquisite sculptures and paintings at night. If his sister weren't here, he would probably think he had walked into a haunted house. No wonder stories always said vampires' residences were gloomy and terrifying, enough to scare people half to death. This simply didn't look like a place meant for humans to live in. Kyle did not care about Dean's little thoughts and continued on his own. I'll help you find your teacher. It may take some time. But whether he accepts you or not isn't something I can guarantee, so prepare yourself mentally. The requirements for a paladin are far harder than you imagine. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a legendary profession comparable to that of a mage. Big brother Kyle, don't worry. I won't disappoint sister or you. Dean promised very solemnly. Then that's it. You and Caitlyn rest first. I have things to attend to. Kyle flashed Dean a wicked smile and, amid the latter's horrified expression, transformed into a puddle of blood and vanished. After leaving the villa, Kyle did not immediately go to find O'Brien. Instead, he first headed to the headquarters of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce at the port to look for Mills, that fat man. For a vampire like him to negotiate this kind of matter personally would look like outright provocation. Your mortal enemy introducing you to a disciplet was simply asking for discomfort on both sides. Besides, he had not given up on the possibility of monetizing his sister's undying romance between human and vampire. It was the perfect chance to have a good talk with that commercial genius of a fat man. However, the fat man should currently be at home, snoring away in his wife's arms. Still, during working hours, he would definitely be at the chamber. So Kyle simply sat down in the fat man's wide, comfortable office chair and waited for his arrival. When the sun was already high in the sky, Mills waddled in with his protruding belly, yawning as he pushed open the door to his private office. Just as he was about to take off his coat, the corner of his eye caught sight of someone sitting in his chair. His whole body shrank abruptly like a sponge. But he quickly calmed down. He was just a small fry, responsible for handling affairs for big shots. No one should make things difficult for him. When he clearly saw the familiar mask on the visitor's face, he hurriedly bowed. Your Excellency, is there some task you require this humble one to carry out? Sit first. There's quite a bit to discuss. Let's take it slowly. The two moved to the sofa by the second-floor window and sat down. Kyle took out a crystal ball and placed it on the tea table. There are two matters in total. For the first matter, I need you to come forward and persuade a master-tier paladin to test a boy's talent for becoming a paladin, preferably give him a chance to become an apprentice. Kyle had not entertained the unrealistic thought that the other party would accept Dean directly as a disciple. But as long as the two made contact, Kyle could use the threads of causality to search among countless futures for the most promising possibility, the price being the immense effort he would have to expend. But for his sister's sake, it did not matter. Moreover, if it succeeded, his family might gain the endorsement of a paladin. That would bring considerable benefits to many of his future development plans. As one of the representative races of dark creatures, vampires truly did not fare well in this world. Whatever they did had to be done in secret. Fortunately, The world was vast. Aside from places like Coral Thorn City, which hid crouching tigers and hidden dragons, it was difficult to encounter experts above elite rank in other regions. If they could obtain a paladin's endorsement, the situation would improve greatly. At the very least, they would not be hunted down or extorted at will under the pretext of being dark creatures. Hiss dash. Mills rubbed his ears fiercely, suspecting he had heard wrong. He knew Kyle's identity. It was commonplace for vampires to conduct transactions with human nobles and merchants. But what had he just heard? Was this vampire planning to directly invade the stronghold of his mortal enemies? This was no longer infiltrating witch hunters, this was aiming straight at the very lifeline of humanity. Mill's expression shifted continuously. Kyle knew what he was thinking and spoke directly. Mills, relax. I'm not asking you to betray humanity or whitewash vampires. After all, most of my kind truly aren't much to speak of. Kyle himself had killed quite a few vampires, especially half-blood vampires. These hybrids, transformed through the embrace, often became intoxicated by the sudden power they gained, enslaved by that power. The evil thoughts in their hearts would be infinitely magnified, and in the end they would become bounty targets under some witch hunter's blade. Seeing that Mills still hesitated, Kyle pushed the crystal ball in front of him. Look at this first. It's also related to the second matter I mentioned. Perhaps after watching it, you'll have a different view. Within the crystal ball, a vast snowy night slowly appeared. A boy of 3 or 4 nestled among several older brothers and sisters around 10 years old, going from house to house, begging with difficulty for food. A warm little house, bright, resounding reading voices, playful laughter under the sunlight, a werewolf. When the scene froze on the boy's hoarse cry of, "I would rather die," this big fat man Mills was already crying even harder than the boy's sister. It truly looked as though tears were spurting like a fountain. Fortunately, he had plenty of water in him, an ordinary person might have already dehydrated. The handkerchief in his hand had long been tossed aside. Mills directly grabbed the tablecloth to blow his nose. Kyle had already retreated behind the desk. The sight of this fat man with tears and snot streaming down disgusted him to no end. Poo-poo dash. Mills blew his nose fiercely twice more before finally restraining his surging emotions. Your Excellency, are you looking to find a paladin mentor for this boy? Mills wiped his face hard with his sleeve. His round face was unusually flushed, whether from excitement or from rubbing it too many times. That's right. This very boy. Rest assured, I will do everything in my power to facilitate this. Even if that paladin refuses, I will personally write a recommendation letter to the Royal Knights of the Crescent Empire, giving this boy a chance to come into contact with more paladins. Although Mills was only a lowest-tier formal professional, being born into a collateral branch of the royal family, coupled with his exceptional talent in business and social dealings, had granted him some connections within the empire. He was equally optimistic about this boy. Combined with his relationship with the intelligence merchant, what the boy lacked to soar to the heavens was merely an opportunity. This was simply the highest quality investment, guaranteed profit with no loss. If he were truly chosen by a paladin, it could no longer be called a quality investment, but rather a legendary investment. Kyle disdainfully used a cleaning spell to wipe the tears splashed onto the crystal ball. And the specific plan? If I'm not mistaken, the second matter Your Excellency wishes me to handle should be to monetize this story, correct? Mills asked cautiously but confidently. Correct. Kyle put away the crystal ball under Mills' reluctant gaze. This story is extremely good. If polished well enough, it would certainly sell tremendously. Noble young ladies would never begrudge the gold coins in their hands. But I'm afraid now is not the right time for this story to appear. Oh. Go on. Kyle was quite curious why this fat man, who had just cried himself half to death over the story, would say such a thing. Before that paladin decides to take on a disciple, widely publicizing this story would be no different from using public opinion to morally coerce the paladin's will. It would surely make that lord feel threatened and manipulated, possibly even provoke resentment and ruin a good thing. The risk is far too great. Mills emphasized. It would be best to wait until the paladin officially accepts the disciple, and then let that lord decide whether the story may be adapted and promoted. Kyle nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Then we'll do as you say, resolve the paladin matter first. He then revealed a strange expression and glanced toward the port. However, you may need to set out immediately. That paladin will soon be heading out to sea to help an adventurer named Zach salvage a shipwreck. He had just peeked at the threads of causality and had not expected Zach to move so quickly. This old adventurer did have some ability. He had prepared all the supplies for departure in just one day. Mills froze. Zach had been woken early in the morning by the caretaker cleaning the orphanage. Without stopping for a moment, he rushed toward the port. After decades of an adventurer's life, he still had quite a few connections. Even before seeking out the intelligence merchant, he had already planned to set sail and salvage a shipwreck. So preparing the necessary equipment and a ship in a short time was not difficult. Clutching his last 3 magic crystals and the team's property deed, he went straight to an old friend, old Owen. This long voyage would rely on Owen's ship and navigation skills. Zach. Are you really going bankrupt for this? Old Owen stared at the magic crystals and deed Zach handed over. His rough fingers gripped the yellowed parchment tightly as he rasped, "You've even put up the headquarters of the Rock Adventure team. Do your brothers know about this?" Ha ha ha. Zach threw an arm around old Owen without a care, grinning proudly. Relax. I've got 100% confidence I'll get our capital back this time. After all, he had 2 big shots backing him now. He was, at most, just the errand runner. So confident? Old Owen narrowed his wrinkled face suspiciously at Zach. You latched onto some big thigh, didn't you? Seeing Zach only grin foolishly with a smug expression, old Owen understood immediately. He kicked Zach squarely in the backside. Spit it out. Something this big and you're hiding it from me? He. Zach was in extremely good spirits. What's the rush? Help me get the equipment ready first. I'll invite the big shot tonight. If all goes well, you'll see him tomorrow. Hey. Playing mysterious now? Enough nonsense. Come on, go check the gear with me. I don't understand this stuff. Without further explanation, Zach dragged the cursing old Owen straight into the noisy trade district of the port. After spending half the night maintaining the longsword damaged in his battle with Kyle, O'Brien did not rest. Instead, he went straight outside the city for his daily training. It was one of the few ways he could quiet his mind. Since becoming a paladin, he had not expected that the easiest thing would be to swing his sword again and again. On the vast lawn, each of O'Brien's strikes was plain and unadorned. There were no whistling sword winds, no dazzling light. His movements were textbook perfect. Only those at a sufficiently high realm could sense that with every swing, the blade condensed tremendous will and spiritual force. Paladins often fought undead dark creatures and knew well how troublesome these monsters were. No matter how severe the bodily injuries, as long as they had sufficient time and food, they would recover quickly. Worse still, beings like wraiths had no physical bodies at all. Thus, to truly harm and completely kill them, the best method was to shatter their mind and extinguish their soul. And sacred power, fused with faith and light, was precisely the greatest bane of such monsters. About 2 kilometers from O'Brien, a luxurious carriage slowly came to a stop along the trade road. He's in the clearing ahead in the forest, about 3 kilometers in. I'll wait for your good news. Kyle pointed toward a direction deep within the woods. Rest assured, leave the rest to me. Mills patted his chest in assurance. Then, with agility utterly inconsistent with his body size, he leapt down from the carriage and mounted a beast of burden built for forest travel shaped like a gigantic pangolin. With several capable guards in tow, he advanced into the forest. While Mills and his party were still trekking through the woods, O'Brien swinging his sword on the grass with eyes closed slightly furrowed his brow. He did not open his eyes, but his powerful perception clearly captured the vibrations from the forest, the faint clinks of metal, and several unfamiliar presences. Opening his gray-blue eyes, he glanced toward the direction from which Mills would soon appear, then refocused his spirit upon his sword. About half a quarter of an hour later, Mills finally reached the clearing. From afar, he saw the paladin practicing his swordsmanship on the grass. He quickly dismounted from the beast of burden, gestured for his guards to remain where they were, and jogged forward in small steps toward O'Brien. O'Brien slowly withdrew his stance. The long sword slid precisely into its scabbard. With faint confusion, he looked at this fat man who appeared to possess only the strength of a formal knight. Stopping 5 steps away, Mills performed a noble salute of the Crescent Empire. "Respected Paladin, I apologize deeply for disturbing your cultivation. I am Mills Horn, President of the Coral Thorn City branch of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce. I have come today at another's request to discuss with you a matter concerning the inheritance of paladins." At another's request? The familiar recipe, the familiar taste. O'Brien reacted instantly, his gaze turning sharp. "Don't tell me that vampire sent you to find me?" The piercing look made Mills' heart skip, yet he maintained a respectful and composed smile. The intelligence merchant had long told him of the conflicts and entanglements between himself and this paladin. Over the past few months he had devoured quite the gossip from it. Instead of directly answering, Mills asked, "Paladin, forgive my boldness, but in your view, what kind of city is Coral Thorn City today?" O'Brien was taken aback. What did he mean? His grey-blue eyes narrowed slightly as he examined the fat man before him. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Mills bowed slightly, his plump hand firmly pointing toward the highest tower of the city, clearly visible even dozens of kilometers away. "My lord, surely you know that this city was established amid the entanglement of countless complex forces. It houses all kinds of people and non-human beings. Yet despite such chaos, it has formed a stable environment and remains extraordinarily prosperous. In truth, Coral Thorn City is a microcosm of our world. It lays bare all splendor and filth, order and chaos, greed and struggle, allowing us to clearly see right and wrong, good and evil." He paused, his voice taking on a merchant's shrewd insight. "So, in your opinion, what does the intelligence merchant count as in this city? A destroyer of order, or a guardian in another form?" "A guardian?" O'Brien had not expected to hear such a title from a human. His expression darkened further. "Yes, a guardian," Mills affirmed without being intimidated. "My lord, perhaps as a recent arrival you have not yet grasped it fully. All dark creatures here are under the control of the intelligence merchant. Precisely because of his presence, this city teeming with mixed dragons and serpents, overflowing with desire has no incidents of dark creatures harming people. Even at night, it remains prosperous." O'Brien fell silent. This had been one of his greatest confusions over the past months. In a place with such dense population and rampant wicked thoughts, dark creatures should easily breed and be drawn here in large numbers. Yet since his arrival, aside from that vampire, he had not seen another dark creature. It seemed they had all fled early on. That vampire has such control? O'Brien still found it hard to believe. Dark creatures were hardly known for rationality. Aside from vampires and a few beings like liches capable of thought, most dark creatures acted on instinct. How could they obey a vampire's command? If dark creatures were organized and disciplined, would they still be dark creatures? The intelligence merchant keeps only those who obey his command. The rest have long been expelled or eliminated. Mills spread his hands slightly. O'Brien closed his eyes, silently digesting the information, weighing its truth and consequences. After a long moment, he slowly opened them. Would a vampire really be so kind? What does he want? Mills rubbed his plump hands together. Originally, he had not been very clear about this question either. Your doubts are entirely reasonable. He spoke sincerely. To be frank, I myself could not make sense of it for the longest time. With the intelligence merchant's abilities, whether he restrained those dark creatures or not would not affect his own interests. In fact, the greater the chaos, the easier it would be for him to reap profits. He paused, then continued, but what I witnessed today, along with your presence, has given me a somewhat different conjecture. Oh. Let's hear it. O'Brien's interest had been stirred. As a merchant, I always used to view people and matters from the perspective of profit. In doing so, I overlooked the most important point. What is it that we are truly seeking? Mills unconsciously rubbed the ring on his finger. It had been a gift from his mother before he came to Coralthorn City. When undertaking something, be it a deal, a transaction, or a decision, I always sought to maximize its profit. That may not be wrong. He shook his head. But precisely because of this ingrained habit of thinking, I may have missed too much, far too much beauty and joy beyond transactions. This time, Mills met the paladin's gaze directly. My lord, forgive my boldness. As a paladin, would you ever betray the unshakable faith in your heart for mountains of gold and silver, for overwhelming power and authority? Of course not. O'Brien answered without hesitation. Exactly. Mill's voice carried a resonant excitement. You rejoice in eradicating evil, feel joy in aiding the weak, take pride in upholding your oath. You have never concerned yourself with personal gains or losses. That is the fundamental difference between paladins and merchants or nobles like us. He drew a deep breath, his eyes burning as he looked at O'Brien. Then please consider this as well. Could it be that everything the intelligence merchant has done is likewise, not for so-called profit, but simply because he wishes to do so? O'Brien fell into deep silence. After a long while, he spoke slowly. You mean, that he does these things out of some faith? Exactly. Mills affirmed decisively. Faith, nothing more. O'Brien exhaled long and deep. Though he upheld the creed of eradicating all darkness, years of experience had taught him better than anyone what true darkness was. It was darkness rooted in thought itself, corruption and distortion deeply embedded in the soul. These were the true breeding grounds of monsters. Speak, O'Brien's voice grew lower, though less cold than before. What exactly did he send you here for? Mills felt a surge of certainty. The change in address meant the man had set aside part of his hostility. He was far more confident about the rest of the conversation. A sincere smile bloomed across his plump face. He bowed again, respectful yet fervent. My lord, the intelligence merchant has asked me to convey a request. He sincerely hopes that you would meet a boy and test whether he possesses the potential to walk the path of a paladin. Regardless of the outcome, this is merely a pure attempt concerning inheritance. Nothing more. Mill's words caused O'Brien's eyes to widen instantly. It had been a long time since he had lost control of his expression. At this moment, like Mills before him, he wondered if he had misheard. A vampire recommending an heir to a paladin? What kind of primordial joke was this? Before he could break free from the absurdity of it all, Mills added, My lord, I have here a recording crystal detailing this boy's upbringing. I originally feared that viewing it beforehand might affect your later judgment in testing him. But after much thought, I believe honesty is the foundation of trust and nothing should be concealed. Whether to watch it now is entirely your decision. Let me see it. O'Brien felt as though he had gone mad, yet he found himself eager to know what this was about. Investigating a candidate's upbringing was itself part of a paladin's assessment, so he found nothing improper in it. And he was genuinely curious what kind of experience would lead a vampire to go to such lengths to find a paladin as a mentor for a boy. Mills handed over a magic crystal that recorded images. As spiritual power flowed into it, scenes of Dean's past gradually unfolded in the air. When the image froze upon the boy's stubborn and pure vow, the tight furrow in O'Brien's brow slowly eased. So that's how it is. He murmured softly. His gaze met the youth's eyes and the image eyes burning with unwavering conviction. In that instant, his teacher's hoarse voice seemed to echo in his heart. Faith is often born in the most unexpected corners. A child raised by a vampire, yet possessing a sincerity countless others lacked. What irony. Even more ironic was that the vampire had personally placed the child before him. He did not question the authenticity of the recording. A paladin's initiation trial was to confront one's true self. Any false memory or fabricated will would turn to ashes beneath the holy light. O'Brien returned the crystal to Mills and fixed him with a blazing gaze. Tell him I agree. He may bring the boy to see me at any time. But a paladin's trial is no child's play. If the boy cannot pass and falls during the trial, do not blame me for failing to warn you. Yes. Yes. "Thank you so much, my lord." Mills was overjoyed. His round face flushed red like a ripe apple. After bowing deeply, he clambered rather clumsily yet swiftly onto the beast of burden and, with his attendants, hurried off along the forest path. O'Brien remained standing where he was, watching their departing figures. A complex light flickered within his grey-blue eyes. He slowly lifted his head and looked toward the sun hanging high in the sky, radiating boundless light and heat. In a low murmur, as if conversing with his unseen mentor, he said, "Teacher, you were right. The boundary between light and darkness may be far more blurred than we imagined. We paladins should break our preconceived notions and attempt more possibilities. Only then might we hope to change this world." At the same time, sitting within the carriage, the corner of Kyle's lips curved into a meaningful smile beneath his silver mask. "Sis, you really helped a lot this time." In the west of the city, inside a room thick with the smell of tobacco and alcohol at the headquarters of the Poison Scorpion gang. "What? You're saying that penniless Zack is setting sail?" A bald, burly man with a strange dark red scorpion tattoo across his face glared at the subordinate reporting to him. "Why yes, boss. The informant at the port said he saw Zack chatting and laughing with old Owen at the harbor market today, buying salvage equipment. He might be heading out to sea within the next few days." A thin, dark man with a similar scorpion tattoo knelt on one knee, trembling. "Damn it. I thought that broke adventurer team was about to fall apart and I could take advantage of it. Now that bastard is laughing and preparing to sail. Don't tell me he's going to turn things around." He had already planned how to divide up the rock adventurer team's territory. Especially the group of orphans in that orphanage. If no one took them in, their gang could sell those brats to traffickers for at least 100 gold coins. At worst, cripple them and toss them onto the streets to beg. It would still be income. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. The Poison Scorpion gang's territory bordered the rock teams. If Zack managed to rise again, he would have no choice but to continue shrinking into this corner. He suddenly smashed the wooden table beside him, snarling, "Go. Contact the Sea Ghost gang. I want to see what waves he can stir at sea with those few scraps of men he has left. I want them all, sunk to the bottom to feed the fish. And have Black Scorpion keep an eye on Zack. Find out what gives him such confidence." "Yes, boss." In the city, it was hard to act, but once at sea, there were far fewer rules. "Zack, let's see where you run this time. Sis, us coming out like this, is it really okay?" Dean wore an exquisite formal outfit that made him extremely uncomfortable. He walked stiffly behind Caitlyn, occasionally tugging at the straight collar. "Relax, little Dean." Caitlyn gracefully adjusted her wide-brimmed hat inlaid with moonstones. Although she wore the magic bracelet her brother had given her, she still was not used to sunlight shining directly on her face. Compared to those nights when demons and monsters are active, Coral Thorn City during the day is actually safer for us. You still have much to learn. I don't want you, after becoming a paladin, to behave exactly like one. Upholding justice isn't achieved through blind asceticism and stubborn persistence alone. She and Kyle were considered, among the new generation of their family, perhaps even among several previous generations, the most rebellious pair. One was obsessed with a rural town, wanting only to live her own life. The other had run off to a chaotic metropolis filled with powerful figures, constantly plotting to found a nation and proclaim himself king. The elders were so furious their fangs trembled. Their family upheld a principle of seclusion to avoid unnecessary trouble. Though not weak, they could not withstand the sheer number of enemies drawn by the vampire identity. As for her own mediocre talent, it was not worth mentioning. Kyle's departure, however, had truly made the elders' corpses warm with anger. Fortunately, Kyle had only gone out to make his own way rather than truly defecting. With sufficient strength to protect himself, he had reassured the family. Caitlyn led Dean into a streamlined alchemical puppet carriage. It slowly departed the villa and traveled along a clean, level road toward the wealthy commercial district, attracting quite a few glances from passers-by. Remember the basic etiquette I just taught you. Don't be stiff. Right now, your status is that of an honored guest of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce. If you can't even control your mindset, you'll only become a puppet for others to manipulate. Dean listened patiently to each of Caitlyn's instructions, striving to adjust his posture and expression. Newspapers. Newspapers. Major news today. Renowned master craftsman Adrian was assassinated at home last night. The Artisans Association has announced a citywide strike starting today, demanding the Duke's mansion investigate the truth. Papers for sale. Official release from the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce. The Pandaren caravan enters the city today. Rare treasures preview. Children and youths wearing vests emblazoned with the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce emblem darted through the bustling streets, shouting their headlines. TCH, it's just a craftsman dying. Making such a fuss, even going on strike. By the roadside, a young nobleman dressed in a silk coat trimmed with gold patterns shook the newspaper he had just bought and sneered disdainfully at his companion. Just a bunch of lowly commoners who don't know their place. Do they really think that by banding together they can stand on equal footing with us true lords? Wishful thinking. He deliberately raised his voice, as if wanting everyone around to hear. If you ask me, those big figures are too kind, giving these mud-legged peasants unrealistic fantasies. A plumper companion beside him blanched and hurriedly covered his mouth. Are you crazy? Are the attitudes of those big figures something you can casually comment on? He glanced around nervously. MMPH. Yanking away his friend's chubby hand, the young man flushed red but stubbornly insisted, What's there to panic about? Was I wrong? They. Yet he stammered and did not dare mention those big figures again. Dean and Caitlyn each bought a newspaper as well. He had only ever seen a monthly gazette before, which only the town mayor could afford to subscribe to. Each month it would be delivered from a major city and nailed to the square for literate townsfolk to read aloud. Looking at the densely packed information on this single sheet, Dean could hardly believe it cost only 3 copper coins. It's truly lively here. Caitlyn browsed the headlines, shipping updates, curiosities, even department store discount ads and announcements of new performances. Even this alternative found herself developing an interest in shopping. Dean, meanwhile, quickly had his attention captured by the short stories and comics in the paper novelties he had never seen before. At the same time, in the northern part of the city, inside the heavy, austere stone hall of the Artisans Association headquarters, more than a dozen long tables were filled with people. Most were plainly dressed craftsmen with calloused hands. A few were masters with steady auras, wearing professional emblems. At the head seat, President Mario, his hair graying and eye sockets sunken, seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. How should Adrian's death be handled? He cannot die so unclearly. A white-bearded old blacksmith pounded the table angrily. Even if we call for a strike among members, can that really solve anything? Those greedy, disgusting parasites have always looked down on us. Another middle-aged carpenter looked anxiously toward the president. Sigh, we're just too weak. The strongest in our association is only a mid-stage master-tier vice president. If we had a grandmaster sitting in charge, we wouldn't be bullied like this, someone added bitterly, despair filling his voice. A grandmaster? How difficult is that? That level means someone who has already carved out their own path. Why would such a figure join a small faction mainly composed of ordinary people? Not only lacking sufficient transcendent resources, but also having to toil tirelessly. Who would take on such thankless work? Everyone fell silent. The vice president had only agreed to join because he was a close friend of President Mario. Even then, he mostly interacted with masters within the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce and rarely participated in association affairs. In a corner, a gray-haired old woman trembled as she repeatedly caressed a small, exquisite amulet in her hand. Adrian had personally given it to her son when he completed his apprenticeship, and her son had passed it to her. Now both her son and her son's teacher had been murdered. Murky tears fell soundlessly onto the smooth surface of the amulet. Is there, truly no way at all, President? She asked through choked sobs. Mario felt immense pain as well. Adrian had been like a brother to him. Not yet 50, already a high-stage elite runic master, he had been on the verge of breaking into the master tier. Yet he had been inexplicably killed. Mario abruptly stood, pressing both hands heavily onto the table. I will go to that intelligence merchant of the underground world. No matter the cost, I will drag out the mastermind behind Adrian's murder. A blood debt must be repaid in blood. The hall fell into instant silence. Everyone stared at him in shock. President. You mustn't, someone immediately objected. That one's intelligence fees are astronomical. Can we truly afford it? And that's just the cost of information. And, what if the investigation reveals some great figure we simply cannot afford to offend, then wouldn't it be? He dared not continue, but the implication was clear: utter catastrophe. Their association was mainly composed of ordinary people responsible for maintaining the city's essential goods production and waste processing, doing the hardest, dirtiest work for the lowest pay. If they could avenge Master Adrian, that would be one thing. But if they failed and had to pay an enormous price, it would be disastrous for these laborers. A cloud of despair once again enveloped the hall. Sobs could no longer be suppressed, rising from every corner for the fallen hero, and for their own insignificance and helplessness. Master Adrian had often supported struggling families within the association, offering help and encouragement, teaching ordinary members to read and learn. In the eyes of countless children, he had been a great hero. Yet after such a respected elder was tragically killed, they did not even possess the ability to avenge him. The entire hall seemed plunged into lifeless silence. All expenses Mario, will bear them alone. Mario scanned the room, having made his decision. Even if it costs me this old life. The association he had founded with dozens of friends now had few left, some dead, some gone. Adrian, the one most likely to succeed him, was now murdered. If he did not make a choice now, then perhaps the association might as well disband. Tut tut tut. Kyle rubbed his smooth chin, not having expected those nobles to strike so ruthlessly. They had directly killed the representative who was the backbone of the Artisans Association. He had originally intended to check on where his sister and her little boyfriend were, yet the moment he followed the thread of causality, the first thing that entered his sight was the headline on the front page of the newspaper in his sister's hands. He knew this Adrian as well, and had even bought his paintings. This artist, born of a fallen noble family yet possessing fine character, had earned his recognition. Let's take a look. Perhaps he can still be saved. The corpse is still here, basically intact. Not bad, not bad. There should still be a chance. I'll be leaving first. I'm very satisfied with this matter. Kyle turned his head and casually praised the fat merchant who had just climbed into the carriage and was about to claim credit before dispersing like a phantom. Mills, who had been ready to show off his achievements, suddenly froze with a stiff smile on his plump face. He blinked at the now empty seat, then after a long moment let out a helpless sigh and called out of the carriage, back to the Chamber of Commerce. Yes, came the response. Inside a secret chamber of the Artisans Association filled with blocks of ice, Adrian, his appearance tidied, lay quietly within a stone coffin. A shadow slowly twisted and stretched out from a crack, eventually condensing into Kyle's slender figure, while the warning runes and protective arrays in the room did not react in the slightest. Kyle walked to the side of the stone coffin. Beneath the silver mask, his gaze calmly examined the corpse within. Turning him into a vampire is impossible, but transforming him into a corpse demon is no problem. With my blood added, he should become a blood fiend with decent potential. And if I add blood orchid as well? He rubbed his chin, as though evaluating a modification plan for a work of art. He gave a light snort and shook his head. TSK, thinking too far ahead. Same old rule, forced melons aren't sweet. He might not even agree. Better ask for his own opinion first. What Kyle needed were absolutely loyal subordinates with potential. A forcibly transformed subordinate, stripped of self, would basically have no potential left, merely a puppet that obeyed orders. Growth would depend entirely on him painstakingly cultivating it. There was no point in taking such a subordinate. He raised his hand, fingers slightly spread. A barrier as thin as cicada wings, emitting a faint dark red glow, unfolded and gently enveloped the entire stone coffin and the surrounding space, completely isolating it from the outside world. Kyle bent down and lightly tapped Adrian's cold forehead with his index finger, condensed with pure dark energy. A wisp of soul so faint it was nearly dissipating into the void was slowly drawn together and gathered by that power. It rose from the cold shell and condensed into a translucent, blurry human silhouette. As a purer strand of dark power infused with the aura of life's origin flowed in, the dull soul gradually regained consciousness. Even its translucent eyes seemed to regain a trace of color. I wasn't already. Adrian's soul opened its mouth without producing sound, yet a clear wave of confused intent echoed repeatedly within the barrier. He lowered his head, looking at his translucent hands, then at the familiar yet unfamiliar body lying in the stone coffin. Strangely, the anticipated fear, sorrow, or anger did not surge forth. In his soul state, his emotions seemed frozen, leaving only a detached calm. "You're awake." Kyle's voice sounded directly within Adrian's consciousness, equally clear and composed. Adrian turned toward the direction of the voice, though it seemed he no longer needed to turn to see clearly. "Who are you?" Kyle removed the mask from his face, revealing a pale countenance with refined features and a faintly youthful air, forming a strange contrast with the powerful pressure radiating from him. "Mr. Kyle." Adrian remembered the man before him, a collector introduced by the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce, who had purchased several of his paintings and was one of his important clients. Let's reintroduce ourselves, Master Adrian. I am Kyle Aiven, a blood race marquis, the founder and controller of the underground order of Coral Thorn City. Of course, you may also call me information broker. Kyle gave a slight bow, performing an ancient and flawless noble etiquette of the blood race. A blood race? Marquis? Adrian's soul fluctuated violently, like ripples spreading across water struck by a stone. His human instinctive vigilance was immediately awakened, yet due to his special soul state, it soon calmed. Kyle paid no mind to his reaction. "As you can see, you are indeed dead. I am here to offer you a choice. Adrian, I value your talent and potential, and I admire that light in you that the mundane world has yet to erode." A choice. Adrian's mental fluctuations gradually steadied. That detached composure regained dominance. Death had stripped away the impulses of flesh, what remained of the soul was closer to essential thought. What must I give? And what can I gain? Become my subordinate. Work for me. An absolute loyalty. Kyle was very satisfied with his directness. Speaking with intelligent people had this advantage. In return, Kyle's voice carried the composure of one in a superior position. As long as it does not harm my core interests or violate my will, you will possess complete freedom of action. You may continue teaching your students, caring for the children you have adopted, even running about for your Artisans Association. Any wealth or honor you gain outside your duties will belong to you. I have always been generous to capable subordinates. His tone suddenly turned cold, his attitude stern. However, Adrian, when you choose to accept this rebirth, you yourself will also become part of my interests. Your safety and your value will be tied to me. Then what do you need me to do? In your current state? Kyle shook his head slightly. You cannot help with anything for now. As for what I will do, I can only say that as long as my bottom line is not touched, I am an excellent partner. But if my bottom line is crossed, then... He paused. A killing intent like mountains of corpses and seas of blood spread within the barrier, causing even Adrian's soul to feel a trembling chill. Then the price will far exceed your imagination. Although Kyle still retained many of his former life personality traits and habits, after experiencing so much, he had long since grown indifferent. Perhaps it was precisely because, after giving all the benevolence and righteousness he could and falling into disheartened clarity, he awakened in this life the talent to see through the causal threads of the world. It also made him understand why the kinder a person was, the more ruthless they became in the end. The reason he regarded Adrian highly was, perhaps, because he saw a trace of his past self in him. I need to think. Time passed second by second. Kyle did not rush him. A shift in one's worldview required a journey of the heart. Adrian's remnant soul quietly gazed at his cold body. Memories from the past rapidly flashed through the depths of his soul. A difficult yet fulfilling journey of study, establishing the Artisans Association with companions who were both teachers and friends. The respect and expectations of students and subordinates, the unfinished works, the unpassed techniques. And that piercing pain through his back and heart, followed by endless darkness. After a long while, he lifted his translucent head. His voice was as calm as a deep pool. "Mr. Kyle, if I agree, what kind of monster will I become?" "Blood fiend." Kyle raised a finger. At his fingertip condensed a drop of golden crimson blood, emanating a heart-palpitating fluctuation. "You will retain your memories, wisdom, and skills from life. But from now on, you may feed only on blood and soul energy. Your strength will directly leap to master level. If your will is strong enough, and your body has high compatibility with my blood, it's possible to rise straight to high-tier master level in one go. Of course, the price is that you may never be able to walk under the sunlight. Your form may also change somewhat, though I will try my best to keep your appearance as it was." Unlike the blood race, blood fiends were purer dark creatures, closer in essence to corpse demons. Sunlight restrained them more strongly, and correspondingly, night amplified them more. The blood race, however, as their blood energy continuously increased, would be increasingly less restricted by sunlight until fully adapting. The magic bracelet he had developed functioned based on the utilization of blood energy. For blood fiends, it could at most conceal their aura, it could not resist the erosion of sunlight. That doesn't sound too bad. Adrian looked at his own corpse with relief. Compared to rotting in a coffin, at least I'll have the chance to continue teaching those children, and personally drag out the one who killed me. It seems you've made your choice. Kyle nodded in satisfaction, and the drop of essence blood at his fingertip quietly vanished. A wise decision. However, now isn't a good time to transform you. We'll need to wait until a troublesome fellow goes surfing first. However, to prevent your corpse from being damaged, it's better to switch it out first. With a lift of Kyle's hand, darkness surged from the coffin like viscous liquid, covering Adrian's entire body and completely swallowing it. When the darkness receded, Adrian's corpse still appeared to be lying there quietly, but what remained was merely a counterfeit. Kyle turned to glance at the wall outside the secret chamber and smiled faintly. "It's getting late. Let's leave as well." As his voice fell, dense darkness swept in, engulfing both Kyle and Adrian's remnant soul. When the darkness dissipated, the chamber returned to deathly silence. Only cold air and frost crystals remained, as if nothing had ever happened. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In the next moment, the heavy stone door slowly opened amid the grinding of gears. President Mario, mentally and physically exhausted, stepped into the chamber. He moved step by step to the stone coffin, his clouded gaze falling upon his friend's pale face. A bellyful of hardship and unwillingness weighed on him, things he wished to tell his old friend. "Oh old friend." Within the chamber, only the old man's suppressed sobs echoed through the chill. It was already noon. The aromas of delicacies from various races filled the wealthy commercial district. Inside a massive bamboo building woven from green bamboo, Caitlyn and Dean stared wide-eyed at a panda chef over 2 meters tall, who stir-fried dishes as though painting a masterpiece. His broad panda paw held a massive iron ladle that could easily smash Dean's skull, yet with a twist of his wrist, it moved as nimbly as a conductor's baton. His other paw rhythmically flipped the iron wok, tossing the ingredients into the air like a rainbow. Flames leapt up in response, drawing waves of applause. At last, with a carving knife, he lightly rotated a snow-white radish, and a crystalline lotus blossomed before everyone's eyes. A few drops of honeydew adorned its heart, so beautiful it defied description. Emerald bamboo honeyed snow lotus. Please enjoy, you too. Seated on delicate and comfortable bamboo chairs, the two stared at the artwork before them, unsure how to begin eating it. Eat. If it sits too long, the texture won't be good. Caitlyn said so, yet her utensils hovered uncertainly. Dean awkwardly tried to imitate the use of the 2 wooden sticks in his hands, his clumsy movements drawing muffled laughter from 2 girls at the neighboring table. One of them, a gentle young lady with deep brown curls and a sunny smile, rose gracefully and lifted her skirt in a perfect curtsy. "Good afternoon. I am Wenna, Frode. It seems this is your first time tasting Bearfolk cuisine. Perhaps I could offer a little help. Her friendly gaze fell on Dean and the unruly chopsticks in his hands. Dean immediately flushed with embarrassment and could only look to his sister Caitlyn for help. Good afternoon, Miss Wenna. I am Kyle Aiven, and this is my younger brother Dean. Thank you for your generous assistance. Caitlyn rose calmly, returning a flawless curtsy, while signaling Dean with her eyes to stand. A pleasure to meet you, Miss Aiven, Mr. Dean. Wenna's smile remained radiant, not minding Dean's still awkward return gesture. She naturally picked up her own chopsticks, slowing her movements to clearly demonstrate the grip and application of force. As a Viscount-level blood race, Caitlyn's bodily coordination far surpassed that of ordinary people. Following Wenna's gestures, she lightly pinched the bamboo chopsticks. After only a few attempts, she mastered their use. Within 3 to 5 practices, her movements flowed as smoothly as drifting clouds and running water, more composed even than Wenna, who regularly enjoyed Eastern cuisine. You learned so quickly. Wenna's eyes sparkled with admiration. She did not think the other party was concealing anything. In this city of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, she was long accustomed to encountering concealed experts. Merely learning to use chopsticks was trivial for such people. Beside them, Dean, still an ordinary person, continued practicing with fingers stiff as chicken claws. Fortunately, he could now tremble as he managed to pick up food. After sincerely thanking Wenna once more, the two finally focused on the 1 gold coin specialty dishes before them. When Dean first saw the prices marked beside the dishes, he had nearly jumped in shock. After working hard for an entire year, he could at most save a few dozen silver coins. A handful of dishes here could wipe out his savings entirely. If Caitlyn had not dragged him here, he truly would not have wanted to stay at all. Even now, though the food tasted exquisite upon entering his mouth, Dean found it flavorless as wax. He preferred the meat soup his sister cooked for him, warm in both body and heart. It was a taste he would never forget in his lifetime. Caitlyn, however, was quite satisfied with the dishes. Although the blood race could not gain nourishment from human food, savoring delicacies was still a pleasant experience. With a wave of her slender hand, she said to the tall panda attendant standing nearby, "Bring 1 serving of every specialty on your menu." She paused, then turned her gaze to Wenna's table and smiled. "Also send a serving of Jade Bamboo Grove and Searching for Plum Blossoms in Snow to the friendly Miss Wenna and her companion." Her lavish gesture quickly drew numerous gazes, curious, probing, envious, and even ill-intentioned. However, when those gazes noticed the wide-brimmed hat casually placed by Caitlyn's side, its surface embedded densely with moonstones that shimmered with pure moonlight under the bright illumination, almost all the unusual looks swiftly withdrew. One who could wear, and dared to wear, so many moonstones as decoration must either be formidable herself or backed by formidable forces. "Sis, isn't being this high profile a bit inappropriate? And isn't this too wasteful?" Dean looked at the rapidly filling table, now piled with a dazzling array of dishes that made his head spin. His face was full of discomfort and heartache. He truly could not understand why his usually thrifty and low-key sister had suddenly become so extravagant. "Eat your food. With so much in front of you, can't you keep your mouth shut?" Caitlyn shot him an annoyed look, though another meaning flickered in her eyes. Having long shared tacit understanding, Dean did not know what exactly his sister intended, but he was certain she had her reasons. He suppressed his unease and tried to maintain outward composure. Such a drastic change in Caitlyn was, naturally, at Kyle's instruction. Since Dean wished to walk the path of a holy knight, he had to learn to interact with people of different social classes and understand all kinds of crowds. Innocence, purity, and ignorance could not make a holy knight. Having lived in the countryside all his life, Dean's understanding of the world's cruelty and the darkness of human hearts remained at the level of Bard's tales. Through this high-profile method, he needed to quickly experience the rules and pressures of the powerful class stepping from fantasy into reality. Dean could only grit his teeth, slowly chewing these delicacies that made him deeply uncomfortable under the gaze of the crowd. Meanwhile, Caitlyn occasionally corrected his dining etiquette. When nobles and wealthy merchants approached to strike up conversations and expand their networks, she handled them with effortless ease. Born of pureblood blood race lineage, such conduct was almost instinct engraved in her blood. Within a few short exchanges, she could discern the other party's intentions and respond with elegant appropriateness. At times she lightly covered her lips with a folding fan while speaking softly, at others she raised her glass with a faint smile in response, striking the perfect balance between aristocratic aloofness and affability. Dean watched in stunned silence. Was this still his gentle and virtuous sister? It felt as though she had become an entirely different person. No different vampire. Don't just stare. Learn properly. Caitlyn's voice suddenly sounded by his ear, yet it seemed only he could hear it. He secretly glanced over and found that she was still exchanging pleasantries with others, not even looking his way. Don't look at me. Look at these people. Learning to discern the malice in human hearts is your first lesson. While Dean was being lectured by Caitlyn, Kyle had already sealed Adrian's corpse in a hidden location outside the city. Done. Time to take the little guy to meet the paladin mentor he's been longing for. Pay attention to their family crests. That sailing ship emblem most likely a maritime trade family. And the thorn patterns along the edge of this one's insignia probably connected to some woodland iron guild. While chatting with others, Caitlyn transmitted guidance to Dean through mental power, teaching him how to observe and deal with different kinds of people. Sis, it's settled. Bring the kid out. We're going to meet his future mentor now. A familiar strand of mental energy linked into Caitlyn's mind. So fast. Didn't you say it would take some time to arrange? Caitlyn was startled inwardly. What, is fast not good? Want me to cancel it? Kyle's habitual teasing tone rang out. Don't. I'll bring him out right away. With that, Caitlyn rose gracefully, slightly bowing to the diners she had been conversing with. With a faint smile, she said to Wenna and the others, everyone, my apologies. There is an urgent matter at home that requires our attention. We must take our leave. She turned to Dean with a meaningful look. He froze briefly, then quickly reacted, imitating his sister as he bade Wenna and the others farewell with a bow. The moment they stepped out of the bamboo building, the alchemical puppet carriage that had been parked earlier was already waiting at the entrance. The two swiftly boarded. The vehicle started smoothly and merged into the street. Several prying gazes hidden in the shadows quietly withdrew. Little Dean, what are you thinking about? Caitlyn noticed that he did not seem particularly excited about meeting a paladin. Instead, he was silent, lost in thought. Do you even need to ask? He's definitely thinking about all the dishes you ordered barely touched before being left behind. Kyle saw through Dean at a glance. Dean opened his mouth, embarrassed. He truly did feel heartache over the wasted food, yet facing the two of them, he did not know how to express it. Relax, Kyle said calmly. Those high-end dishes won't simply be thrown away. They'll likely end up with the attendants or in the kitchen. As for the money, that's even less your concern. Caitlyn should have taught you already here, social interaction comes first. Money and food are secondary. As long as you gain enough social knowledge, the meal is worth it. The puppet carriage drove into a nearby branch of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce. Dean finally changed out of the restrictive formal attire and into comfortable new casual clothes, letting out a long breath of relief. The other party is outside the city. The puppet carriage isn't convenient there, I'll take you directly. Kyle then turned to Caitlyn. Coming along? Of course. Caitlyn naturally would not refuse. How could she miss such an important moment? Besides, with her superpowered little brother present, would the other party really dare to cut her down? Then let's go. Dense darkness enveloped the three of them, and they vanished from the spot. Sitting cross-legged beneath a tree in meditation, O'Brien suddenly opened his eyes and looked toward the forest ahead. Three figures emerged from the shadows of the trees, one in front and two behind. Slower than I expected. O'Brien rose slowly, his gaze sharp as he examined the newcomers. Something small delayed us, Kyle replied calmly, stepping aside to gesture for Dean to go forward on his own. He and Caitlyn would watch from a distance. Dean took a deep breath and walked toward O'Brien. The mere 100 meters felt incomparably long with every step. O'Brien's grey-blue eyes carefully assessed the boy before him, green, young, without the slightest trace of cultivation, simple to the extreme. It was difficult to imagine this was a child raised by vampires. Dean stopped 2 meters before O'Brien, looking at him with a mixture of nervousness and resolve. He gave a solemn bow. "Respected Paladin, I am Dean. I am willing to accept any trial, as long as I may follow in your footsteps and become a true Paladin. And if I say that to follow my footsteps, you must distance yourself from vampires, how would you choose?" Caitlyn could not help clenching her fists. Dean merely furrowed his brow slightly. His gaze did not waver in the slightest. "Sir, you should have seen my past experiences. The purpose of my pursuit of justice is to protect. And the one I most wish to protect is my sister. If I betray my original intention, then I will no longer be myself." Looking at his calm gaze, O'Brien finally revealed the first smile since they had met, faint though it was. "Very good. Remember what you said today. When your future self is lost, these words will be the beacon that leads you back to yourself." He drew his long sword and planted it into the ground between them. The blade gleamed coldly in the sunlight. "Grip it." Dean froze for a moment, then obediently reached out and grasped the hilt. Buzz. A circle of gentle white light enveloped Dean. A holy aura surged continuously from the sword's hilt, washing over his body and soul like waves of the sea. Dean was completely immersed in a dreamlike yet real illusion, or rather, he was reliving his life once more. This time, under the witness of holy light, he would walk his life's path again. While Dean underwent his initiation trial, O'Brien observed Kyle and Caitlyn. A paladin's initiation baptism was essentially a higher-level soul detection. A person's good and evil, and their personal will, would be laid bare beneath the holy light. How astonishing! I never expected to see a blood race not aligned with evil. O'Brien looked at the faint blue glow emanating from Caitlyn. Yet what shocked him even more was the pure white glow around Kyle, untainted, like that of a newborn infant. But, how could that be? What about now? Sensing what O'Brien was thinking, Kyle cooperated by controlling his will. The white glow around him shifted, now turning blue, symbolizing order, then red, symbolizing chaos. O'Brien's eyes widened. His composure shattered once more. What had he just witnessed? Someone who could deceive soul detection. You can manipulate the feedback of soul detection. Kyle did not answer. Beneath the silver mask, his eyes gazed at the holy light surrounding Dean. With a curl of his finger, a strand of holy light was drawn into his palm. Holy light never rejects one who truly understands it. This. O'Brien's worldview was utterly overturned. Kyle looked at the warm holy light in his palm, as if glimpsing his former self within it. But he merely waved his hand lightly, allowing the strand of holy light to slowly dissipate. He was someone who looked forward. Why would he indulge in the past? The essence of holy light is far more inclusive than you imagine. It's just that the sacred power forged by paladins combining their faith with light energy resonates more closely with holy light and more easily earns its favor. That has given you paladins the illusion that only paladins can gain holy light's recognition. You have never truly understood holy light. O'Brien was completely dumbfounded. He felt as though this was not Dean's trial but his own. The holy light, the very power paladins prided themselves upon, had actually been manipulated by a vampire. If this were to become known, it would likely stir up a massive upheaval across the entire plane, perhaps even beyond it. O'Brien panted heavily. His faith had nearly collapsed just now. When he saw Kyle controlling the holy light, his first instinct had been to immediately cut down this vampire who dared to profane it. Yet the last shred of his reason told him that if he raised his sword against a person acknowledged by holy light, then what exactly was the belief he had upheld all his life? How did you do that? O'Brien's eyes were bloodshot as he struggled to calm his violently pounding heart. Caitlyn covered her mouth with both hands, staring at her younger brother in utter disbelief. That was holy light. An existence that would reduce ordinary dark creatures to ashes at the mere touch. Even the elders of their family would not dare to touch holy light yet in her brother's hands, it moved as obediently as his own arm. You shouldn't be asking how I did it, Kyle's voice was as calm as a still abyss. You should be asking why holy light chose me. O'Brien seemed struck once more by a heavy blow, yet he gritted his teeth and asked, then, why did holy light choose you? Your definition of holy light as purity, redemption, hope, and justice is not wrong, on the contrary, it is very accurate. The mistake lies in how narrow your understanding of purity, redemption, hope, and justice is. Holy light has never shown favoritism based on race or bloodline. It only responds to the essence of one's will. Kyle summoned another strand of holy light, letting it flow between his fingers. You regard dark creatures as alien beings that must be eradicated, yet you forget that true evil originates from the corruption of the heart. The will of the heart shapes the soul, that is why holy light can illuminate the soul in different colors. But will itself does not equal corruption. What holy light truly burns and rejects is a fallen heart. Kyle extended the hand entwined with holy light toward Caitlyn, looking at her encouragingly. Caitlyn stared blankly at the radiance in her brother's palm, the light that made her very soul tremble. Suppressing her instinctive fear, she reached out with trembling fingers and clasped his hand. The searing pain and burning she had anticipated never came. Instead, an unprecedented warmth flowed through her entire being. There was no rejection, no harm, only an indescribable, strangely comforting sensation. How is this possible? O'Brien could not comprehend the sight of a second vampire ignoring holy light before his very eyes. You. How can dark creatures disregard holy light? That is the power of light. No. Holy light is the power of spiritual will, the power of the soul. It merely manifests outwardly as light. Light and darkness are natural attributes. If holy light were truly a light attribute, then even I would be absolutely incapable of controlling it, because I am indeed a dark creature. In battle, you generally rely on sacred power to invoke holy light. And most dark creatures are born from twisted and evil will, so naturally they fear it. You who are accustomed to swords and blades, how would you ever notice that beings like us, blood race, whether transformed by dark power or born purely of it, as long as our will has not fallen and our hearts are not consumed by distorted desire, then how could pure holy light harm us? O'Brien felt overwhelmed by the torrent of worldview-shattering revelations. His head spun, darkness clouded his vision. After a long time, he finally spoke slowly. This matter cannot be known by others. If such a thing spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kyle rolled his eyes hard. Has holy light dazzled your brain? A vampire running around proclaiming he can ignore or even control holy light. What, do you think my coffin is too new and needs replacing? And yet you dare reveal this in front of me? Aren't you afraid I'll sell you out? O'Brien glared at the bastard who had shattered his spiritual foundation. I naturally have my own confidence, Kyle sneered dismissively. Besides, this is a gamble in itself. And it's the prerequisite for building trust. With the ability to observe causal threads, did you really think you could slip out of my grasp? If you were a legendary paladin, I'd have fled already. Would I still be standing here explaining all this? Trust? O'Brien's eyes hurt from glaring. This bastard dared to speak of trust. Of course. It just depends on you. I've already shown sufficient sincerity, and even deepened your paladin's understanding of holy light. If that still cannot earn trust, then I can only say I overestimated the paladin order as a whole, Kyle said matter-of-factly. Who dash? It hurt. It hurt too much. O'Brien felt a pain in his chest that defied description. Why did every encounter with this bastard leave him so infuriated? Ignoring the two vampires, O'Brien turned his gaze back to Dean, who was gradually awakening from the baptism of holy light. As the holy light slowly receded, Dean opened his eyes. His entire being radiated a vitality unlike anything before. Not bad. In such a short time, you've gained holy light's acknowledgement. It seems you haven't done much in your life that goes against your conscience. How do you feel? O'Brien asked in a deep voice. Dean carefully sensed his condition. There was an indescribable sense of lightness. It feels like I've let go of many things, yet also taken on more. He met O'Brien's gaze. But I'm clearer than ever about what I want to do. Very good. A glimmer of approval flashed in O'Brien's eyes. The lingering gloom stirred up by Kyle dissipated somewhat. Many candidates who underwent the baptism still remained confused about their path, merely following in their mentor's footsteps, just as he once had, until his own mentor passed away, and he was forced to seek his direction alone. Only then had he realized how terrifying it was to be lost about one's future path. O'Brien turned toward Kyle and Caitlyn. From here on, Dean will follow me for systematic training until he graduates or chooses to give up. Do you have anything further to say? Caitlyn stepped forward instinctively, only to halt halfway. Her silver-white hair drifted softly in the breeze, her eyes filled with concern and reluctance. Little Dean. Stop, stop, stop. Seeing his sister's overly sentimental tendencies about to flare up again, Kyle quickly cut in. You can see him anytime you want. This old man is definitely staying in Coralthorn City for the short term. If our cooperation goes smoothly, this old man probably won't be leaving for decades. O'Brien's temples throbbed as Kyle called him old man again and again. He very much wanted to curse out loud, your whole family are old men. Who doesn't know you vampires are a bunch of ancient monsters? But the discipline of a paladin forced him to swallow the insult. Cooperation. What cooperation do you want? He truly wanted to hear what kind of cooperation a vampire sought with a paladin. Kyle did not answer directly. Instead, he took out a crystal ball and projected a vast curtain of light before them. A magnificent city slowly emerged upon it. Sunlight pierced through drifting clouds, casting a fantastical glow upon buildings of different styles and colors. On wide, immaculate roads, vehicles brimming with a magical punk aesthetic moved back and forth like flowing musical notes. In the streets and alleys, centaur couriers weaved nimbly through crowds. Flower sprites fluttered about, selling sweet candies. Halflings played cheerful melodies in the plaza. Dwarf and gnome artisans displayed intricate mechanical toys. On an outdoor screen, a live-action version of Tom and Jerry was being screened. The terrifying monsters and dark creatures that once inspired fear had become film stars and regular guests in horror-themed amusement parks. From stadiums filled with vitality and cheers, to tranquil forest paths, from bright classrooms echoing with the sound of reading, to libraries vast as oceans. Regardless of race, regardless of status, everyone could freely pursue their own dreams. Kyle gazed at the scene before him, a long-lost sense of fulfillment rising within his heart. This was a world he had conceived by blending the fantastical scenes of anime, films, and novels from his previous life with the real species and cultural elements of this world. This was the true fantasy world he envisioned, one brimming with hope and possibility, not the current dark fantasy steeped in intrigue and bloodshed. At first, an adventure world of heroes roaming the lands might seem novel. But after enough time, one would find it utterly meaningless. Like playing an endless Souls-like game, nothing but slaying monsters. Even after clearing it, it merely marked the beginning of the next cycle. It would be better to challenge the path once walked by great figures himself. Otherwise, what would be the point of living another life? Caitlyn, Dean, and O'Brien had never seen such a sight. Even in their dreams, they could not imagine a world so beautiful it bordered on illusion. Even the legendary Divine Kingdom might struggle to compare. This is. O'Brien involuntarily raised his hand, as though to touch the heaven-like world. The future I envision. Not bad, right? Kyle looked at them with unconcealed pride. O'Brien forcibly pulled his focus back. As a paladin, he had embarrassed himself enough today. Indulging in illusions would only dull his will, returning to reality was the proper path. This is nothing but fantasy. Even the gods cannot accomplish such a thing. Have you forgotten what I told you about the paladin predecessors who failed in founding a nation? Speak plainly, what exactly do you want to do? I haven't forgotten. Failure means summarizing experience, not abandoning the effort entirely. The future holds endless possibilities. If you don't even dare to imagine, how can you move forward? Besides, I have plenty of time. I should find something meaningful to do with my life. For now, of course, we start by finding a feasible path. The image on the light screen suddenly shifted. Caitlyn and Dean, still immersed in a dreamlike vision, snapped back to reality. This time, the projection displayed a bird's-eye view of the entire Coral Thorn City, every street and corner clearly visible. Kyle pointed at the various districts marked in different colors. These are the largest local forces in Coral Thorn City: the Duke's Mansion, the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce, the Deep Sea Union, the Shadow Guild, the Local Family Alliance, the Adventurers and Mercenaries Guild, and the weakest Artisans Association. These forces counterbalance one another, which is why Coral Thorn City maintains relative stability. But now, the Artisans Association, the representative of the common people, is facing dissolution. The Family Alliance, dissatisfied with the association's advocacy for the lower workers, has been assassinating its backbone members. Just last night, while you were chasing me, the association's next leader was assassinated at home. Kyle deliberately emphasized the word chasing. Caitlyn and Dean exchanged glances. The battle that had shaken the city's night sky last evening, could it have been between these two? O'Brien frowned. You're telling me this because you want me to help the Artisans Association take revenge? No. I want you to join the Artisans Association. Impossible. A paladin will not join any faction. O'Brien glared at Kyle with uncompromising resolve. Then join as a warrior. As a forging grandmaster. Kyle glared back without yielding. Don't tell me you're still clinging to those outdated paladin codes. If a paladin cannot do it, then do it under another identity. Otherwise, you'll witness rivers of blood when the Artisans Association collapses and Coral Thorn City undergoes a massive power reshuffle. If not for Dean's appearance giving him the opportunity to win over O'Brien, Kyle truly would not have known how to draw the Artisans Association into his camp. The identity of a vampire had little appeal. If word leaked that he sought to control these public forces, he would immediately be besieged from all sides. In the worst case, he might even attract a legendary. No one would care whether his intentions were good or evil. What a damned world. O'Brien narrowed his eyes. Have you forgotten that you sent me out to sea to salvage for someone? Of course not. Kyle's voice turned teasing again. There's a little surprise waiting on this voyage. What trick are you playing now? This time it's not me but the pirates under the Deep Sea Union. Conveniently, you need to establish a new reputation and enter Coral Thorn City under a new identity. Using those scum to build your prestige would be perfect. At last, O'Brien truly grasped the meaning of Kyle's title as an information broker. Not only did Kyle know his movements intimately, he even knew of his identity as a master smith. Every step seemed woven into Kyle's calculations, each ring linked to the next, the entire rhythm firmly in his grasp. You're so certain I'll agree? O'Brien attempted to reclaim a sliver of initiative. Then, will you refuse? For the first time before O'Brien, Kyle removed his silver mask. Looking at Kyle's youthful, devil-may-care face and recalling how he had been toyed with for 3 months, O'Brien truly did not wish to agree. Yet the corner of his eye caught sight of Dean, and he could not help but sigh inwardly. You win. Your objective is achieved. O'Brien closed his eyes. He had agreed. Let him be reckless once for the sake of an ideal. Then happy cooperation. Kyle smiled and performed a gentleman's bow. O'Brien merely snorted coldly, saying nothing. Kyle paid no mind to the familiar tsundere undertone. The man was about to work for him for free. What more attitude could he demand? Once you formally enter the Artisans Association, I'll provide sufficient resource support. What you need to do is help promote the various products and cultural concepts I've developed. Wouldn't it be more suitable to approach nobles and merchants for that? And it doesn't sound particularly difficult. O'Brien could not understand. Of course not suitable. Many of these things would face resistance from nobles and merchants. More likely, I'd simply be devoured whole. These matters are anything but simple. Without someone of sufficient identity and standing to push them, they'll be nearly impossible to implement. And among those capable and willing, at present I can find no one but you. Even you, in your current state, are insufficient for some of them. We must proceed gradually. What exactly do you intend to promote, that you believe only I would be willing to do? Once again, Kyle had piqued O'Brien's curiosity. It's not anything too complicated. Let's start with the simplest part. With a thought from Kyle, the scene within the light screen shifted again. A standard year-round school appeared in the projection. The most serious problem right now is that educational resources are basically monopolized by the nobility. This is also the main crux cutting off the upward path for commoners. After you take control of the Artisans Association, you can first establish an academy within the association to cultivate technical talents. Besides ordinary technical professions like chefs and maintenance workers, the focus should be on training professionals capable of becoming rune masters and forge masters. At this point, even Kyle felt a headache coming on. In this world, the rules of physics were influenced by supernatural forces, making the transformation of many materials and energies extremely complex. Substances that did not possess soul, vitality, or magical properties could collectively be referred to as elements. Under normal conditions, they were relatively stable. But once influenced by extraordinary forces such as mind, chi, or magic, these materials easily transformed into other states of property. Therefore, any product in this world that had a complex structure and special effects basically required magical materials. And magical materials were exceedingly scarce. This made high-end technological products difficult to popularize, ultimately causing the entire world to appear stuck in a very backward medieval civilization. Yet in reality, magical technology was not weak at all. He had even glimpsed, along a causal line, a spacecraft capable of traversing planes, its technological sophistication far beyond imagination. To popularize magical technology, there were only two options. Either increase the quantity of magical materials so abundant they could be freely mined and used. Or achieve a technological breakthrough that could process ordinary materials into relatively stable magical materials suitable for everyday life. These two professions are key pieces paving the way for the subsequent plan. If we can't even cultivate the required talents, then everything is meaningless. Of course, I won't contribute for nothing. All future research achievements of the Artisans Association must be shared with me and must prioritize meeting my needs. O'Brien stared at the school blueprint in the light screen. Kyle had not only neatly categorized every specialty but also detailed the curriculum system for different stages and the required faculty allocation. It was even more refined than noble education. No wonder you said no one would dare to do this. Just this set of curricula spreading among the common people would trigger a frenzied backlash and suppression from the noble class. This is only the foundation. Next depends on whether you can withstand the pressure and carve out a path in this chaotic city where ordinary people can grow freely. What I can provide is support in resources and intelligence. Unless absolutely necessary, I won't personally step in. That would only make the situation more chaotic. After all, my identity is that of a vampire. This is also an attempt for me. Success would be best. If not, I'll treat it as accumulated experience. Aren't you afraid of implicating Dean? O'Brien seemed to have finally found Kyle's weak point. After all, you're the one pushing me to face off against these nobles. Caitlyn also looked at Dean with worry. She truly hadn't expected her younger brother to start by digging at the noble's lifeline. Is a paladin a flower raised in a greenhouse? If he can't withstand even this bit of growth and storm, he might as well die early and stop dragging my sister down. Bang! Caitlyn smacked the back of Kyle's head hard. Kyle showed no reaction and continued looking at Dean. I'm not joking. I found you a mentor, and I'll provide every resource you need without shorting a single bit. If you lack strength, then work hard to become stronger. I'll give you time to grow 5 years. Within 5 years, I'll clear away any enemy more than one major rank above you. After 5 years, if you haven't reached elite, Baron, get lost on your own. Kyle then turned his gaze to Caitlyn, his tone stern. Sis, rein in that love-struck brain of yours. Without strength, and you still want to date a paladin? When the time comes, you'll probably be hunted by both the underworld and the authorities. If you really like this brat, your own strength can't be low either. If you were a blood prince, you could take this brat and roam the world freely and happily. Even a legendary prince, paladin wouldn't easily trouble you. Caitlyn's cheeks puffed up from her brother's scolding, yet unusually, she did not retort. She had come to find Kyle to avoid being discovered by her clan for dating a human. Finding a mentor for Dean had been secondary. She secretly glanced at Dean and found him looking back at her. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit and confidence, just like when they were children, still unwilling to admit defeat. Ha ha ha. O'Brien suddenly burst out laughing, his rough hand slapping heavily onto Dean's shoulder. Kid, looks like you've got plenty of hardship ahead. After confirming Kyle's attitude toward Dean, O'Brien felt somewhat reassured. It meant Kyle hadn't treated Dean as a disposable pawn but truly regarded him as his sister's suitor. Though he still wasn't optimistic about the two, well, who knew? Kyle snapped his fingers in satisfaction, and the light screen dissipated. Since we've reached a consensus, I'll leave this brat to you. Once you officially join the Artisans Association, we'll contact each other again. Kyle tossed a small spatial ring and an identity token to O'Brien. These contain the resources he'll need for 5 years of cultivation, as well as a consecration token from the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce. I'm handing them over to you together. O'Brien swept it with his spiritual power and found it packed to the brim with rare medicinal herbs and a full 100 magic crystals. The corner of his mouth twitched involuntarily. He truly couldn't understand how this lying through his teeth vampire had received the recognition of holy light. Then. Good day. Kyle gave a slight bow, and he and Caitlyn disappeared into the shadows of the forest. O'Brien turned to look at Dean and found him still staring foolishly in the direction where Caitlyn had vanished. At some point, a pendant had appeared in his hand. Meanwhile, in the bustling harbor district of Coral Thorn City. Zach, your big brother here has really gone all in this time. If this salvage fails, the two of us brothers will truly have to jump into the sea and feed the fish. Old Owen's rough fingers gripped the pawnshop contract tightly. His wrinkled face was full of anxiety and heartache. Zach grinned and forcefully patted Old Owen's shoulder. Relax. I've told you 800 times this time it's guaranteed profit. To ensure safety at sea, Zach had bought the best equipment possible. In the end, even Old Owen had to put in extra money to gather a full set of rune diving gear and magical resistance reinforcement for the hull. But I still feel uneasy. I've got a bad feeling something will go wrong. Old Owen remained worried. Especially with pirates running rampant lately. It said that even the Duke's Mansion fleet responsible for suppression lost a ship, and the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce basically only protects its own merchant vessels. We can only rely on ourselves. Zach glanced around, then pulled Old Owen into a secluded corner before quietly revealing part of the truth. Half of the cargo we're salvaging this time belongs to that mysterious intelligence merchant. WH-. Old Owen was just about to shout when Zach clamped a hand over his mouth. Shoo. Zach glanced around vigilantly again. Only after confirming no one was paying attention did he release his hand. I say, old brother, can you stop jumping at every little thing? For something this big, and you didn't tell me earlier. Old Owen looked displeased, but his expression quickly shifted into one of gossiping curiosity. I heard that one is a legendary pureblood vampire. Is it true? It should be. But I haven't even seen that one's face. What a pity. They say a pureblood vampire can perfectly transform a person into a vampire and grant nearly eternal life. Unlike ordinary vampires, who can only drain people dry and turn them into half-human, half-ghost blood thralls. Old Owen drifted off into fantasy. Stop daydreaming. Aren't you afraid the witch hunters will mark you as one of those vampire fans? I'm just thinking about it. Even if I wanted it, they'd probably despise me for being old, ugly, and smelling like salted fish. Old Owen waved his hand as he came back to his senses. But you, kid, looks like you really are cornered and going all in. That one's fees are famously expensive. I truly have no choice. If I can't get money soon, my whole family will starve. When Zach thought of the final instructions from his fallen teammates, his heart tightened painfully. Vinny, Toril, Mian, rest easy. I, Zack, will avenge you. Images from half a month ago flashed through his mind, the carefully laid ambush by bandits, and the sudden appearance of a horde of magical beasts. His eyes turned red. Realizing he had touched on painful memories, old Owen hurriedly changed the subject. Then who's the other one? That was what old Owen cared about most. After all, it was this person who would be sailing with them. I only know that the other party is a very strong warrior. I don't know anything else. But that one seems to have a poor relationship with the intelligence merchant. Zack frowned slightly. Old Owen frowned as well. You know nothing. Is that reliable? And they're not on good terms. Could it be that the intelligence merchant is using you to the other party? No. Once you see that one, you'll understand what it means for the word reliable to be written all over someone's face. Zack was extremely confident in this. After decades of adventuring, he had never misjudged a person. Then hurry up and take me to meet that one. My little heart is about to jump out. Zack looked up at the half-slanted sun in the sky. What's the rush? We have to wait until night. We've both been busy all day. Let's find a place to rest first. Sis, I'll be heading out next. 3 days at the shortest, a week at the longest. You can either stay here and cultivate or go out for a stroll, it's up to you. Just remember, don't go to the west side of the city. It's rather chaotic, too many reckless fools there. After returning to the villa, Kyle leaned against the bar counter and took a small sip of the crimson wine served by an alchemical puppet. Oh. The busy man has another task? Caitlyn asked curiously. She had long grown used to a leisurely lifestyle. Among vampires, this was common. A temperament like her brother's, almost incapable of idleness, she had never seen a second one like it. Handling some matters of subordinates. I'm not like you, alone and unattached. TCH, only an oddball like you would pile endless trouble onto yourself. Fine, go do your thing. Don't worry about me. Caitlyn sank into the soft sofa, letting the alchemical puppet massage her. It had been a long time since she had indulged in the decadent luxury of vampire life. She found herself somewhat nostalgic. Draining the wine in one gulp, Kyle left directly for the docks. Since they were meeting O'Brien at night and feared delays, Zack and old Owen didn't dare drink. The two remained on the deck of their cleaned-up sailboat, enjoying the sea breeze. Just as they were staring blankly at the sunset sinking below the horizon, a shadow silently appeared on the ship's rail. The air is quite nice. Kyle's voice came from behind them. Zack leapt up abruptly, nearly knocking over old Owen beside him. Why, Your Excellency. Old Owen immediately slid to his knees on the deck, his face full of flattery. Greetings, my lord. Are you all prepared? Yes, my lord, everything is ready. We guarantee to complete your task flawlessly. Old Owen hurriedly snatched over Zack's words, nearly choking Zack, who had just opened his mouth to speak. There will be quite a bit of trouble at sea this time. Just look after yourselves. Leave the rest to O'Brien. Kyle tossed a bone-carved compass to Zack. Time is tight. Don't waste it searching for the wreck. This compass will guide you directly to the exact location. Before the two could react, Kyle vanished as silently as he had arrived. The two were left standing in the wind, disheveled and staring at each other. Deep within the mist forest, 150 li north of Coral Thorn City, in a natural cave 500 meters underground inside the secret stronghold where Adrian's body was stored. Burin, how is the formation for transforming Adrian into a blood fiend coming along? Kyle's figure appeared abruptly beside the stone coffin in the center of the hall, as dark energy receded like a tide. My lord, it is prepared. A massive figure, completely shrouded in black cloth, hung upside down in the dense spiderwebs above the hall. In a hoarse, bone-grinding voice, it responded slowly. Things on my end have also gone very smoothly. You may begin channeling energy into the formation. Yes, my lord. The dim underground cavern, which had only a few faint blue glimmers before, now lit up with a ghastly pale glow. Upon closer inspection, the light all came from rune formations woven from strands of spider silk. Burin manipulated the silk deftly with 8 white skeletal limbs, plucking the threads to produce a strange yet ethereal melody. The stone coffin at the center of the formation was now wrapped in countless strands of spider silk, forming a pulsating cocoon of light. It flickered in rhythm, as though nurturing some ancient life. If a witch hunter or adventurer were to witness Burin's form, they would be unable to contain their excitement. As a bone-bound spider formed from the fusion of an ancient skeleton and a giant demonic spider, it was an exceedingly rare species even among dark creatures. The cursed spider silk they produced was an exceptional material for magical conduction. Even the most ordinary strand could fetch the price of 10 low-grade magic crystals per thread on the black market. Precisely because of the immense value of their silk, the already scarce population of bone-bound spiders had dwindled even further. Though they possessed considerable combat strength, they could not withstand human greed. Many bone-bound spiders were drained of their final strand of silk before perishing completely. It wasn't that no liches or dark wizards had attempted to breed bone-bound spiders. But most efforts ended in failure. The cost and return were entirely disproportionate, far less profitable than hunting wild ones. Burin, this unlucky fellow, had been rescued by Kyle 50 years ago from the pursuit of witch hunters. At that time, it had only 3 legs left out of 8. Its body was shattered and worn, looking as though it would fall apart after just a few more steps, while Burin guided the formation with bone music and drove energy into the luminous cocoon. Kyle continuously cast various shaping spells, adjusting and reconstructing the energy circuits. Transforming someone into a blood fiend was no easy task. The main difficulty lay in preserving Adrian's original form. As an advanced mutated version of a corpse fiend, a blood fiend was still, in essence, a corpse fiend, and corpse fiends were notorious for being huge, ugly, and reeking of rotting stench. For Kyle to eliminate all those flaws was no less than performing a full-body reconstructive surgery. For the sake of making his subordinate look human, he, as the boss, had no choice but to personally wield the knife. Late at night, Mario wrapped himself in a wide black robe, his face covered by a cheap mask, and entered the brightly lit underground city. This was the largest extraordinary resource trading venue in Coralthorn City. As long as one had money, all kinds of goods could be purchased here without fear of counterfeits. Unlike other black markets, this place was unusually orderly. From buyers to sellers, everyone strictly abided by the rules of keeping quiet and settling money and goods cleanly. No one dared cause trouble here. He had come here several times before, but never once made a purchase. It was simply too expensive. Fortunately, any professional at elite, baron, level or above could enter free of charge. Even without spending money, it was still worthwhile just to broaden one's horizons. Nervously squeezing the magic crystals hidden in his sleeve, he walked toward the intelligence merchant's shop only to find that the entrance, usually lined with a long queue, was completely empty. It wasn't until he approached that he saw the closed sign hanging on the door. He froze on the spot. Why? How could this happen? Why now of all times? His mind felt like it was exploding. Did he not even have a chance to find the culprit? Post a bounty on the black market? That was even more unrealistic. Who could guarantee the captured person wouldn't just be a scapegoat? By then, the money would be spent, the matter unresolved, and innocent people might even be harmed in vain. If Kyle knew what Mario was thinking, he would certainly be pleased. The credibility he had painstakingly cultivated over the years had clearly borne fruit. After thinking for a long time and failing to come up with a solution, Mario could only approach a patrol officer responsible for maintaining order in the underground city. "Sir, may I trouble you for a moment?" Mario lowered himself and painfully took out a silver coin, offering it over. The patrol officer glanced at the coin but made no move to take it. He knew what the other party wanted to ask, but he didn't know the answer either. Obtaining this job had not been easy. Even exploiting authority for profit required skill. Even the intelligence merchant would offer some hint or implication to those seeking answers. If a small fry like him took money in exchange for useless information, he would likely be stripped and thrown out the next day. Don't ask. We don't know when the intelligence merchant will reopen either. If you're in a hurry, come check every day yourself. With that, the patrol officer turned and continued his rounds without looking back. Mario stared at his retreating figure for a long time, sighed, put the silver coin away, and left silently. Behind the Rhinoceros Tavern, O'Brien carried a nearly unconscious figure over his shoulder. It was Dean, who had trained basic physical conditioning all day. Now he hung limply like a water-soaked sandbag, too exhausted to even groan. In the shadows at the alley entrance, Zack and old Owen had long been waiting anxiously. Upon seeing O'Brien, Zack's eyes lit up. He quickly tugged old Owen forward and bowed. "My lord." "So soon?" O'Brien stopped, his gaze sweeping over the two. "Wouldn't dare delay your time, my lord." Zack hurriedly stepped aside to introduce, "My lord, this is old Owen, the captain for this voyage. He has decades of sailing experience. He's also my old friend, absolutely reliable." Old Owen bent over immediately. "Greetings, my lord." O'Brien glanced at the drowsy Dean on his shoulder and said helplessly, "Very well. 7 tomorrow morning. Meet at the docks. Prepare an extra ration." "Yes, my lord." Zack agreed readily. Though full of curiosity about the person O'Brien was carrying, he did not dare ask. After bowing again with old Owen, they turned to leave. At that very moment, a cold glint flashed in O'Brien's eyes. His long sword was drawn in one smooth motion, turning into a silver bolt that tore through the night. With the hum of slicing air, the blade was already pressed against the neck of a shadow hiding hundreds of meters away in a dark corner. "Who are you?" Black Scorpion's mind went blank. Everything had happened too fast. He had only been ordered to monitor Zack. Who would have thought that after taking a few extra glances at the person Zack met, he would be captured the very next second? He hadn't even seen how the other party moved. What kind of major figure was this? Jay just passing by. "Spare me, my lord." Black Scorpion pleaded aloud, while his hand secretly reached toward a poison projectile hidden in his sleeve. "Still not honest?" O'Brien snorted coldly. His left hand shot out like an iron clamp, gripping Black Scorpion's neck precisely. With a twist of his wrist. Crack. Crack crack. A series of bone-dislocating sounds rang out, making one's teeth ache. Black Scorpion didn't even manage a scream before collapsing like a heap of mud. Every joint in his body, even his jaw, had been dislocated. He could only whimper in terror and despair. "My lord." Zack finally reacted, rushing forward in shock and fury. When he saw the familiar dark red scorpion tattoo on the man's face, a chill shot from his feet to his scalp. His earlier good mood vanished instantly. Both frightened and furious, he realized that in his recent busyness, he had completely forgotten about these relentless hyenas. "It's trash from the poison scorpion gang." He spat viciously on the ground. "In your place, how is something like this usually handled?" "My lord, by Coral Thorn City's rules, if a gang spy is caught, either their fingers are chopped off as a warning or they pay ransom. But the Poison Scorpion gang is notoriously vicious. Letting him go will definitely bring endless trouble." "You have a grudge with them?" "Our territories happen to border each other." Zack gritted his teeth, fury burning in his eyes. "These scum survive by extortion and protection fees. They even traffic women and children. My adventurer team has clashed with them many times. Back when I had more professionals in my team, we weren't afraid of them. But now that my team has suffered heavy losses, these hyenas can't wait to pounce." He clenched his fists so tightly his knuckles turned white. The unspoken fear lingered thickly in his voice. "They would take action against your base while you're at sea." "That, they wouldn't," Zack replied firmly. "As long as I pay the Adventurers Guild fees on time, no one dares risk offending all adventurers by touching an adventurer team's base. But sabotaging us behind the scenes, stabbing us in the back, that's guaranteed. And how should he be dealt with?" O'Brien shook Black Scorpion in his hand, eliciting muffled, pained sounds. Zack stared at Black Scorpion on the ground, a feral grin spreading across his weathered face. "In my humble opinion, take him aboard. Once we're out at sea, throw him overboard to feed the fish. No one will care. Black Scorpion tried to beg, but he had no strength left. He could only whimper weakly. Very well. I'll leave him to you. O'Brien nodded. He had seen enough of the filth of bottom-tier gangs. With a flick of his hand, he tossed the limp Black Scorpion to Zack's feet. Without another glance, O'Brien carried the sleeping Dean and strode into the noisy Rhinoceros Tavern. Zack looked down at Black Scorpion by his feet, ruthlessness etched across his weathered face. Poison Scorpion Gang, is it? Once I recover my footing, the first thing I'll do is wipe you out. Black Scorpion still hasn't returned. No, boss. Cooley narrowed his large eyes, and an ominous premonition slowly rose in his heart. Having carved out his territory in Coral Thorn City, Cooley naturally had no shortage of enemies. He had always trusted his instincts. Interesting. He licked his dry lips irritably. It seemed this Zack had truly stumbled into outrageous luck and latched onto some formidable backer. Black Scorpion was, after all, an elite rogue. Anyone who could take him down so easily had to be at least master level. He needed to report this to higher-ups immediately and find a way to extricate himself. He had no intention of becoming a sacrificial pawn. Damn it. No. Cooley slammed his fist onto the table, his knuckles cracking loudly. Given the grudge between him and Zack, if the latter had truly found a powerful patron, there would be no escaping it. He couldn't gamble on that. If that was the case, then he might as well make a big move, earn a ruthless fortune and run. This foundation could be abandoned if necessary. Having clawed his way up from the bottom, he understood one truth above all: staying alive was the top priority. Send word to the Blood Hand Brotherhood and the Noose Gang. Tell them Boss Cooley has a big deal to discuss. Yes. After his subordinate scrambled out, Cooley retrieved a vial glowing with an eerie purple light from a hidden compartment. As he turned the bottle in his hand, he imagined himself fleeing into the distance with a treasury in tow. This interference potion was one of his treasured trump cards. It allowed the user, for a short time, to interfere with others' judgment. Though the stronger the opponent, the weaker its effect, it was more than sufficient against fellow elite gang members. Combined with information that was 9 parts true and 1 part false, it would be enough to lure those 2 hungry wolves into the fray. Early the next morning, Dean, after soaking in medicinal baths all night and now carrying a faint herbal fragrance, walked spiritedly behind O'Brien. It was his first time seeing the sea, and he was about to embark on a maritime adventure with his teacher. His heart surged with excitement, he nearly wanted to shout aloud. But seeing his teacher's stern expression, he restrained himself. Taking a deep breath to steady his emotions, he gazed at the sea dyed golden red by the rising sun. The cries of distant seagulls and the sailboats rising and falling with the waves formed a uniquely tranquil scene before his eyes. Entering the docks, the area was already bustling. Muscular laborers carried enormous cargo bundles past them. The salty sea breeze mixed with fishy odors and the damp scent of goods, hitting him in the face and snapping him abruptly back to reality. The pungent smell made him gag. Only after they stepped onto the pier where ships were moored did the fresher sea breeze disperse the murky air and allow him to recover. What? Can't handle even this little smell? O'Brien asked without turning around, a hint of teasing in his voice. Dean released his grip, scratching his head while suppressing nausea. It's my first time smelling something this strong. I'm not used to it. Ever been on a ship? I rowed small fishing boats a few times back home. Dean's eyes suddenly lit up as he looked at the shimmering sea. But I've never seen a sea vessel this big. O'Brien glanced sideways at the brightness in the boy's eyes. Seems you yearn for the sea. Not really. Dean rubbed his hands sheepishly. It just feels fresh. Oh, teacher. He suddenly lowered his voice and leaned in mysteriously. I heard there are monsters in the sea bigger than houses. Have you seen them? I have. And I've killed them. Really? Dean nearly jumped in excitement. How big was the biggest? What kind of monster? Many kinds. The largest was probably the Zalgar sea serpent, 50 meters long. O'Brien recalled calmly. There was also the Sacto kelp aberration. When it spread out, it could cover an entire ship. Dean sucked in a cold breath, then thought of something else. Then, ghost ships. Have you encountered any? I once saw one in the mist from afar. O'Brien's expression suddenly grew serious. But I never engaged it. That kind of thing, best never to encounter. Why, teacher? Because they drift along the boundary between life and death, carrying the curses of the deceased. They are among the existences closest to the netherworld. The hairs on Dean's neck stood on end. The once comfortable sea breeze now felt bone-chilling. My lord! Over here! Zach's rough shout came from the end of the pier, interrupting their conversation. Seeing the 40-meter-long, 8-meter-wide twin-masted sailing vessel, O'Brien nodded in satisfaction. It was a fine long-distance ship. They stepped onto the deck of the vessel named Wavecrest. Zach, Old Owen, and 4 others were already waiting respectfully. These were 4 of Zach's remaining 6 able-bodied teammates, the other 2 had stayed behind at the base to care for the injured. Old Owen hurried forward, rubbing his hands with a smile plastered across his face. My lord, hot water and breakfast are prepared in the cabin. You 2 rest first. Once the tide rises fully, we'll set sail. O'Brien nodded slightly and led Dean toward the cabin. Old Owen bent at the waist to guide them, his polished boots creaking on the deck. The sailors securing freshwater barrels nearby cast curious glances at the 2 newcomers. So these were the important figures the captain mentioned. Their clothes looked ordinary even worn, but the steady aura about them inspired confidence. Zach's 4 teammates remained on deck, continuing preparations for departure. Grek, what level do you think that lord is? The slender Vivian whispered, leaning against Grek's broad arm. Her slender fingers absently traced the muscles of his arm. At least Grandmaster, I'd say. Didn't the captain mention he was introduced by that intelligence merchant? And we're going up against a ghost-eyed shark pack this time. Sitting on a barrel, Grek frowned as he repeatedly polished a large shield. The previous battle had badly damaged it, and it had only just been repaired. I think you're all underestimating things. The blonde girl Haley sat on the railing, swinging her legs as her gaze drifted between the affectionate pair and the distant horizon. Do you remember the battle 2 nights ago that shook the entire city? Wait, you don't mean Dash? That's right. It was very likely a battle between this lord and the intelligence merchant. Haley declared confidently. I asked Captain Zach about the time he met the intelligence merchant. Comparing that to the timing of the battle, it lines up. He met the merchant shortly after the fight ended. Strong experts clash often in Coral Thorn City, but such a coincidence in timing, combined with the captain's speculation that this lord and the intelligence merchant aren't on good terms. It's probably correct. Think about it. Someone who can battle that intelligence merchant who maneuvers among all the major forces and shake the heavens. Their strength must be at least in 10th level. Hiss. After fighting, the merchant turns around and introduces a mission to his opponent and the opponent accepts. What kind of devilish relationship is that? Vivian widened her eyes, her expression a mix of disbelief and gossip-fueled excitement. Vivian's peculiar train of thought left the others speechless. Even the usually silent berserker, Simo, glared at her as if she were an idiot. What? Is there something wrong with what I said? There's a huge problem. Grek couldn't help knocking her lightly on the head. Do you think powerhouses fight like street thugs? Throw punches and then sling arms over each other's shoulders to grab a drink afterward? Haley rolled her eyes and added, for 2 intent-level experts to maintain some sort of tacit understanding after a battle, it can only be due to exchange of interests or deeper maneuvering. That battle itself might have been part of the transaction. As O'Brien's sailing ship slowly departed the harbor, Caitlyn stood alone on the viewing terrace of a port tavern. Brat. Not a shred of telepathy at all. Her expression darkened in displeasure, silver teeth lightly biting her lip as her gaze followed the gradually receding vessel until it shrank into a tiny black dot on the horizon and finally vanished. From beginning to end, the figure she had been waiting for on the deck never once glanced toward the terrace. Leaving deep finger marks pressed into the railing, Caitlyn stormed off from the harbor and began wandering aimlessly through Coralthorn City. "You're certain that ship has left port?" Cooley asked urgently. "Absolutely certain, boss." The skinny subordinate grinned fawningly. As instructed, several of us took turns watching from afar. No one would have noticed. We only left after the ship sailed out to sea. Send word to the Blood Hand Brotherhood and the Noose Gang. We move tonight. And don't forget those bastards from the Sea Ghost Gang. All that money fed to them like dogs, it's time they coughed something back up. After grinding through negotiations all night, it was time to collect principal and interest alike. Caitlyn wandered without direction through the central commercial district. The tall and magnificent architecture of Coralthorn City reminded her of her homeland, the Moonlight City. Yet the noisy crowds and glaring sunlight here always made her feel slightly uncomfortable. Along the main streets, she occasionally saw shuttered shops and restaurants, as well as striking demonstrators confronting patrol squads, holding banners and shouting slogans. Latest news. Massive mysterious disappearances of merchant caravans along the Greenfield trade route, heavy losses. Memorial service for Master Adrian to be held tomorrow. A newsboy weaved skillfully through the crowd, holding freshly printed newspapers aloft. Caitlyn bought a copy and entered an adventurer's tavern that was still open for business. Perhaps because of the strike, there were more adventurers inside than usual. The place buzzed with noise as mercenaries and adventurers gathered in small groups around wooden tables, drinking and chatting. Dressed in common adventurer attire with her hood pulled low, Caitlyn blended seamlessly into the crowd. She chose a relatively quiet corner by the window, ordered a glass of dark red wine and a small plate of snacks, and began reading the newspaper silently, occasionally eavesdropping on nearby conversations. She radiated an air of leisure and languid ease. The Artisans Association sure has guts. They actually dared to protest in front of the Duke's mansion. These people really don't know their own weight. A few words of incitement and they rush into the streets causing trouble. Exactly. If you ask me, the Artisans Association is about to fall apart. This is just them trying to disgust people one last time before dying. Who knows? It's strange enough that the association was established at all. Not a single big-name figure inside, yet it still managed to form. I did hear something about that. Supposedly, the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce backed the Artisans Association just to spite the local nobles. No way. The association's practically collapsing, and the Silver Moon Chamber hasn't reacted at all. Who knows? Better think about what we're going to do. The sudden shift in topic dampened everyone's mood. They sighed heavily. What can we do? Wait for the big shots to step in. I'm not taking any caravan escort jobs these next few days. Yeah. If it were magical beasts, we could at least hire more hands and settle for less pay. But now? No one even knows what they ran into. People and goods just vanish without a trace. Caitlyn's eyes scanned the section about the Greenfield trade route. Large numbers of merchant caravans and escort personnel have mysteriously disappeared. No clear signs of battle were found at the scene, nor have any survivors returned with useful information. Her beautiful brows lifted slightly. She and Dean had traveled along that very route. It was considered one of the safest trade roads. Yet in just a few days, it had become so perilous. If only Kyle were here. She could have asked her seemingly omniscient younger brother. At this moment, Caitlyn was not the only one looking for Kyle. The major forces of Coralthorn City were searching for him as well. Shortly after Mario left the underground city in dejection, the entire area was placed under lockdown. Representatives from the Duke's mansion, the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce, local nobles, and the adventurers and mercenaries guilds gathered with grave expressions at the underground city branch of the Silver Moon Chamber. All of them had suffered mysterious disappearances of caravans and members. The heaviest losses belonged to the Silver Moon Chamber and the local nobility. President Mills, you truly have no idea where the intelligence merchant has gone. Willie Blackthorne asked irritably, glancing at his pocket watch for the nth time. Mills took out a handkerchief and wiped the sweat from his face. Already obese, his agitation made him feel even hotter. Willie, I'm no less anxious than you. But I truly have no direct contact with that individual. I only know that he was still here yesterday during the day. As for when he left or where he went, I have no idea. The elite adventurers I dispatched not only failed to find the cause, some of them disappeared as well. I've never heard of such a situation. The vice president of the Adventurers Guild, Oven Sun, wore a grim expression. Time is pressing. The Duke's mansion has urgently reported the matter to the Crescent Empire's royal family, but who knows how long it will take for investigators to arrive from the capital. A refined middle-aged steward spoke with restrained urgency, but every day the trade route remains paralyzed, our losses grow. Instead of waiting idly, why not dispatch a large force to clear all the trees along the route? Let's see what can hide then. No. Mills hadn't expected such a seemingly respectable man to propose such a rotten idea. His round face flushed red instantly. The Greenfield trade route was opened only after the Silver Moon Chamber paid a tremendous price to obtain permission from the Treant clan. Your proposal would not only ruin the Chamber's reputation, it would start a war with the Treants. So what? This is the territory of the Crescent Empire. What can a few old trees possibly do? Willie was losing patience as well. His family had lost 3 escort teams, 2 major caravans, and a master, Viscount, Runmaster. The term, heavy losses, was an understatement. The others didn't voice agreement, but their expressions made their stance clear. You've all gone mad. Completely mad. Mills roared, his corpulent body trembling with fury. The Silver Moon Chamber firmly opposes this. As long as I stand here, no one will touch the Greenfield trade route. He shoved his chair back violently, his golden-laid cane striking the tiled floor with a sharp crack. Under the gloomy stares of the others, this collateral member of the royal family strode out with his head held high. After his footsteps faded, Willie Blackthorn calmly adjusted the displaced chair. Gentlemen, please excuse our esteemed President Mills. After all, he is merely a small, formal-level professional. That thin trace of royal blood in his veins may have made him naive enough to forget dash. In this world, rules are always written by strength. Ho, it's really lively. After a busy day, once Kyle confirmed that Adrian's bodily transformation had entered a stable stage of self-reconstruction, he was finally able to temporarily withdraw his focus. Out of habit, he began sensing the threads of causality, probing for information related to himself. If he hadn't checked, it would have been fine. Once he did, it was a shock. A new secret realm had appeared. As for those who had disappeared, it was hard to say whether they were lucky or unfortunate. A place like a secret realm was like opening a blind box. With good luck, one would gain immense rewards, with bad luck, one would die on the spot. With his current strength, without obtaining useful intelligence first, he would never step into such a place lightly. Anything called a secret realm naturally had its own unique aspects. From the vague information he had read so far, he only knew that it was a secret realm. As for the rest, he would have to personally go to the location of the incident to see whether more information could be obtained. Still fairly smooth, Kyle's gaze returned to the center of the karst cave, where a light cocoon wrapped in pale spider silk pulsed continuously. The transformation of flesh and bones is basically complete. Next comes the most time-consuming part, the reconstruction of the life core and regeneration of the skin, at most 3 more days, and it should be finished. Too bad I only have you, Burin, capable of maintaining a formation of this level under my command. Otherwise the speed could have been even faster. Kyle actually wanted to go check out that secret realm right now. Aside from the small secret realm belonging to his own family, he had never been to any others. My lord, do you need me to increase the formation's operating power? Burin's hoarse skeletal grinding voice added several more shades of eeriness to the cave's terrifying atmosphere. 8 white skeletal limbs trembled uneasily upon the web, like a child who had done something wrong. Burin, you're overthinking it. This is fine, you've done very well. Don't let your thoughts wander. Kyle gently reassured him. Bone-bound spiders were pure dark creatures. Their intelligence was generally low, about the same as a child's, and they required careful nurturing from their superiors. Yes, my lord. Burin's uneasy spider legs steadied again as he continued plucking the web silk in a steady rhythm. The faint blue flames within his skeletal eye sockets flickered with a hint of excitement. Kyle withdrew his gaze, his thoughts turning toward Coralthorn City. I should still notify that fat man Mills. Daring to bully the fat man on my territory, are they really not putting me in their eyes? Or are they trying to give me attitude? And that fellow Cooley. This clown actually dared to be so bold. ISOs. My lord. From the shadows along the cave wall slowly emerged a bizarre humanoid creature woven from countless torn cloth strips and darkness, the Shadow Demon. Kyle tossed a recording crystal to ISOs. Deliver this to Mills. Then go to the western part of the city. Tonight you should be able to have a full meal. As for those gang members who've invaded the territory of the Rock Adventure Team, leave none of them alive. If those scum stayed within his territory openly, it would be inconvenient for him to order his subordinates to act, it might provoke dissatisfaction from other forces. But if they sneaked out on their own initiative, then he had no reason to be polite. Opportunities for black eating black should never be missed. As you wish. ISO's trembling figure sank into the shadows together with the crystal and vanished. Mills sank heavily into his wide velvet-wrapped office chair. His small eyes, which normally gleamed with shrewd light, were now unfocused as he stared out the window at the busy harbor that had nothing to do with him. 30 years. He had come to Coralthorn City nearly 30 years ago. He had seen countless storms, yet never had he felt such bone-deep helplessness as he did now. For the first time, he truly felt how much his strength limited him. But he had no choice. Strength also required talent. Reaching the formal rank had already required massive resources to push him there. Unless he obtained some heaven-defying treasure, or... The thought had only just surfaced before he crushed it himself. As someone with royal blood, having dealings with vampires was already crossing the line. Fortunately, he and the intelligence merchant maintained a tacit understanding. Considering the greater profits involved, everyone simply pretended not to see it. Besides, if he transformed into a vampire, he would only be expelled from his family and hunted down. Everything he currently possessed would turn into nothing. Moreover, after frequent contact with the intelligence merchant, he had learned quite a lot about vampires. Mixed-blood vampires transformed through the embrace by purebloods found it extremely difficult to control their craving for blood and life. Without sufficient willpower, they would only become slaves to their own power, turning into a madman and eventually be reduced to ashes beneath the silver swords of the witch hunters. While he was lost in these wandering thoughts, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped, as if a cold current had swept through. A crystal-clear recording crystal suddenly fell from the ceiling without warning and struck his round belly with perfect accuracy. What is that? Mills jumped out of his chair in shock, his fat body nearly overturning the desk. When he finally looked down with lingering fear, the familiar dark moon emblem glowing faintly on the crystal's surface came into view. It was the exclusive mark of the intelligence merchant, Kyle. That elusive vampire. He muttered, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead while his plump palm pressed against his still-pounding chest. After calming himself for a moment, Mills eagerly bent down and picked up the recording crystal glowing with a faint blue light. Carefully, he injected a trace of weak mental power into the crystal. Buzz. Light flowed across the crystal's surface as two clear moving images projected side by side into the air before him. Both images showed the same scene: a caravan loaded with goods traveling steadily along an emerald forest trade road. Everything looked perfectly normal, but as time passed, the two images gradually began to differ. In one image, the caravan continued forward normally. In the other, the caravan was erased as if by an invisible rubber eraser, fading frame by frame starting from the rear of the convoy until it vanished entirely. The image then froze. They entered an unknown space. As for whether they can come out, even I don't know yet. Once I finish what I'm doing, I'll investigate, Kyle's lazy voice sounded from the crystal. As for those fools, let them go ahead and make a fuss. The Greenfield region isn't so simple. This is a perfect chance for those self-important idiots to recognize themselves. When they look down on others, they don't realize they themselves are the objects of others' ridicule. Mills pressed the recording crystal to his ear, repeatedly listening to Kyle's final mocking remark. The corners of his mouth unconsciously lifted. That lazy, sarcastic tone sounded incomparably pleasant to him, instantly sweeping away the gloom clogging his chest. "Heh, a bunch of arrogant fools." He could practically see Willie Blackthorne and the others returning covered in dust and disgrace. "Go on, show off all you want. When you smash your heads open dash." He suddenly lowered his voice, imitating the hypocritical tone of nobles. "Dear Chairman Mills, you must have a solution, right? Ha 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 ha." Outside the door, the secretary waiting to be summoned by the chairman had no idea why his previously gloomy boss had suddenly burst into laughter. Could he have gone mad? He hesitated, wondering whether he should break in, yet feared angering the royal noble even more if he disturbed him rashly. Just as he was hesitating, the door opened. Mills walked out while humming a cheerful little tune. "Come on, let's see what kind of the setting sun was like blood." The last trace of dark red glow was swallowed by the rolling black clouds, while the salty sea wind carried the stench of rotting fish from the dock district, swirling through the narrow alleys of the western part of the city. Cooley sat inside the gang's secret chamber, making final preparations with the leaders of the Bloodhand Brotherhood and the Noose Gang. Seeing the large number of poison gas bombs prepared by Cooley, the scar-faced brute from the Bloodhand Brotherhood could not help but twitch at the corner of his mouth. Even the iron ball he was idly tossing in his hand became a little unsteady. "You're making such a huge move. Aren't you afraid of bringing the Adventurers Guild's retaliation? For gangs like theirs that were attached to major forces, as long as the trouble didn't grow too big, killing a few petty merchants, vendors, or slum dwellers was hardly worth mentioning." But Cooley was preparing to attack an enemy adventurer team. Although that team was practically only a name now, it was still technically a member of the Adventurers Guild. Robbery was one thing, the severity could vary. But judging from this setup, it looked more like he was planning to wipe them out completely. "Heh, are you scared?" Cooley looked at the scar-faced brute with disdain. "Scared my ass. Even if there's retaliation, they'll come after you, Poison Scorpion Cooley. The two of us are only here to hold off the security squad and those nosy adventurers," said the lanky man from the Noose Gang as he leisurely sipped his tea. "Then stop spouting nonsense. I've already greased the right palms. The Sea Ghost Gang will handle Zach's group at sea, and the Adventurers Guild will turn a blind eye. How much meat you can eat depends on yourselves." "Fine. Then we'll make our move at midnight," the scar-faced brute said in a muffled voice. Meanwhile, aboard the Wavecrest, which was sailing toward Coral Reef Island, a group of people were enthusiastically playing dice in the cabin. 3 6s. Leopard. Pay up, pay up. Vivian slapped the table excitedly, her face flushed red after winning 3 rounds in a row. "What the hell?" Greg lifted the dice close to his eyes and examined them carefully. "These dice aren't filled with lead, are they?" "Fuck you." Old Owen cursed as he reluctantly took out a silver coin. "Brat's got ridiculous luck. I've been sailing 40 years and never seen someone roll 3 leopards in a row." O'Brien leaned against the ship's railing, pondering the so-called surprise from that vampire whose name he still did not know. He rarely raised his sword against humans, yet now he had no choice but to re-examine the blade in his hand. To carve out a better path for this world, he had to press forward without hesitation. He agreed strongly with the saying, "The future holds all possibilities," though he only hoped he would not fall into corruption along the road ahead. "My lord, would you like some mead?" Zach approached carrying an oak barrel, the sea wind whipping his clothes loudly. "With the current wind speed, we should reach Coral Reef Island by tomorrow night." O'Brien did not even turn his head. "No." Zach awkwardly scratched his nose. My lord, we prepared quite a few snacks and games. Would you like to join us?" "No. One of my teammates is a very good bard. Her singing is wonderful." "You dash." "No." Cold sweat began forming on Zach's forehead. "Then, is there anything we can prepare for you dash?" "No." Seeing O'Brien still staring silently at the dark sea, Zach opened his mouth, but swallowed the words back down. Sensibly, he bowed slightly and withdrew, returning the quiet night to this somewhat aloof powerhouse. Zack desperately wished to establish some sort of connection with a powerful figure like O'Brien. Whether he could avenge his fallen teammates depended on it. Yet reality left him helpless. This lord was taciturn and disliked being disturbed. As for the young man who was clearly his disciple, he was being exhausted by harsh training and had no chance to talk either. Sigh. Zack stared at the figure by the railing and took a fierce gulp from the oak barrel. Having the chance to undertake a mission alongside such a top-tier powerhouse yet failing to build a connection, if he missed this opportunity, he would regret it for the rest of his life. When he entered the cabin and saw the others playing merrily, Zack only felt exhausted, not a single reliable one among them. Boss, hit another wall. Haley lifted her attention from the dice and looked at her captain's dejected expression. Seeing Zack only drinking silently, Haley teased. Boss, if you keep drinking like that, you might miss Coral Reef Island tomorrow. Instead of obsessing over building a relationship, why not think about how to get that lord to teach you a couple of moves? From what I can see, that lord doesn't like socializing, but if it's about combat or professional skills, he probably wouldn't be stingy with guidance. Zack slammed the barrel down, his eyes wide. Right. How did I not think of that? A professional question. I need to think carefully. Everyone watched their captain dash into the resting room in a hurry. Haley shrugged. I bet 5 copper coins the captain will run out in 3 minutes asking us what counts as a professional question. I bet 10 copper coins, old Owen narrowed his eyes, that 10 minutes later he'll realize he doesn't even know what a professional question is. Simo silently placed a silver coin on the table. He'll come out and start striking all kinds of strange combat poses, asking whether those count as professional questions. The cabin fell silent for a moment, then erupted into even louder laughter. Dark clouds completely covered the sky. Drizzling rain began to fall, driving the last pedestrians away from the streets. But in just moments, the rain suddenly intensified. Bean-sized drops smashed onto the stone pavement, splashing half-finger-high sprays. In the blink of an eye, it formed a vast white curtain of rain, wrapping the entire street in chaotic mist. Crack! A pale bolt of lightning tore through the night sky, illuminating the figure standing before the hall entrance. Ha ha ha, what perfect weather! The scar-faced brute stretched out his hand to catch the pouring rain, letting the icy water run through his fingers and into his sleeves. With this torrential rain as cover, unless we tear the house down, even the security squad probably won't notice. Although Cooley nodded in agreement on the surface, he was not satisfied inside. Without the security squad being delayed, his plan would have far more uncertainties. It seemed he would have to abandon part of the profits. I'll take my men to block the western alley entrance. You'd better be quick on your end. The scar-faced brute put on his blood-gold gauntlets, metallic scraping sounds echoing as he flexed his knuckles. With a wave of his hand, he led his lackeys into the rain. The lanky man from the noose gang said nothing more. He crooked a finger at his subordinates and walked off in the opposite direction. Once their figures disappeared completely, Cooley turned and entered a secret chamber. Looking at the man inside the chamber, someone identical to him in appearance and build, Cooley could not help but sigh. I'll leave the rest to you. My life has long belonged to the Lord. If not to repay him, I wouldn't have lived until today. After taking my revenge, every day I lived was simply waiting to die. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. Cooley patted the man's shoulder. The fake Cooley hurriedly left. The shape-shifting potion had a time limit. He had to complete the mission and die before its effects ended. That way, even after the potion expired, without a soul and will to anchor it, his body would not revert to its original appearance. Sigh. After tonight, he would once again be all alone in the world. The fake Cooley led his subordinates to attack the Rock Adventure Team's headquarters according to the plan. Meanwhile, the real Cooley headed straight toward the Blood Hand Brotherhood's base. Yes, his real targets were the Blood Hand Brotherhood and the Noose Gang, not the Rock Adventure Team that had already been reduced to near poverty. Now, because of the heavy rain, he had no choice but to give up the more distant Noose Gang. He planned to raid the Blood Hand Brotherhood's secret treasury and flee immediately, avoiding any complications from dragging things out too long. Rain poured down like a waterfall. Cooley's figure darted through the dark alleys like a ghost. His speed was so fast that a series of vacuum-like afterimages briefly appeared in the rain curtain before vanishing again. According to the plan, the fake Cooley could delay things for at most half an hour. He had to end this quickly. With the strength of an elite-level thief, it took him barely more than a dozen breaths to cross 5 city blocks and arrive outside the largest casino controlled by the Blood Hand Brotherhood, the headquarters of the scar-faced brute Blood Hand Casino. Big. 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 Raise the bet. Hit. Ha ha ha. No more bets. The shouts of the dealer and the roars of gamblers sounded particularly harsh beneath the pounding rain and rumbling thunder. Cooley raised a hand to wipe the rain from his face. Beneath the hood of his cloak, the corner of his mouth curled into a cold smile. He adjusted the drenched cloak so the hood perfectly concealed his face, then staggered forward with the unsteady gait unique to gamblers and pushed open the door leading to fortune. Move it, you bastards. Get your clothes and tattoos ready. Inside a temporary hideout prepared in advance, the scar-faced brute cursed in a low voice while his subordinates hurriedly changed their outfits. When we rush into the shops, grab whatever you see. If the security squad shows up, set a fire and withdraw. Move fast. The scar-faced brute grabbed a coat embroidered with a poison scorpion pattern and pulled it over himself. If someone thought the Blood Hand Brotherhood would take the blame for this, they were dreaming. 3 streets away, the lanky man from the Noose gang was performing the same disguise. Both gangs had silently reached the same conclusion: taking the money was fine, but taking the blame was not. High above the pitch-black sky, Isoza's distorted form flickered in and out within the lightning like unstable television static. These humans' overly cautious preparations made him restless with impatience. If not for his lord's order that he must wait until these people entered the Rock Adventure team's territory before acting, he would have swallowed them all already. Only when the fake Cooley rushed into the Rock Adventure team's territory first did Isoza's head finally split open into an exaggerated grin-like crack. Finally dinner time. The dozens of men led by the fake Cooley had barely stepped into the Rock Adventure team's territory when the already dim surroundings grew even darker. At first they thought the rain was simply obstructing their vision, but soon they could no longer see even the slightest glimmer of light. It was as if they had stepped into the gaping maw of an abyss, completely losing their sense of direction. Boss? Are you still there? Boss, are you still there? A trembling voice from one of the lackeys echoed repeatedly in his own ears. He stretched his hands forward, groping blindly, yet felt nothing at all. Even more terrifying, just a second earlier he could still faintly hear the splashing sounds of people stepping into puddles while moving forward. The next moment, even the violent sound of rain disappeared. The entire world was left with nothing but the thunderous beating of his own heart. Unfortunately, he received no reply. They were already trapped inside Isoza's shadow body. Aside from themselves, they could no longer perceive the existence of anyone else. Ah, the taste of fear! Isos greedily inhaled the aura of fear within his body. Human flesh and souls were like chewing wax to him, but those spiritually rich emotions were exquisite delicacies. These disgusting bodies and souls can be left for the other colleagues. They're really too unpleasant to eat. Just as he savored the endless feast, the scar-faced brute and the members of the Blood Hand Brotherhood also leapt into the prepared shadow maw like moths flying into flames. Isos suddenly trembled with excitement, his entire form rippling irregularly. The man wearing those blood-gold gauntlets gave him quite a surprise. Sharp punches filled with dense killing intent left streak-like scars within the shadows. When the brute was nearly exhausted, he actually managed to tear open a crack in Isoza's body. Rain mixed with the salty sea wind suddenly rushed in through the opening. Hope instantly filled the scar-faced brute's eyes. For the first time he felt how wonderful it was to be alive. Using the last of his strength, he lunged toward the crack. Only to discover in despair that his feet had no surface to push off from. He merely performed a futile jumping motion in place while watching the gap shrink smaller and smaller. No dash. The scar-faced brute's unwilling roar had barely pierced the rain curtain before countless shadows wrapped around his body. Like a drowning man pressed beneath water, he ultimately left behind nothing but a string of desperate bubbles. Ah, satisfying. Iso's body churned violently in satisfaction, twisting and writhing like boiling asphalt. His neck twisted at a bizarre angle as pitch-black eyes locked through the rain curtain onto the members of the Noose gang. The devouring desire surging within him caused the shadow body to expand and deform, countless tendril-like shadows waving around him. Maybe I should take the initiative. It's not that far anyway. The shadows began spreading outward like a spiderweb. But just as they were about to extend beyond the territory of the Rock Adventurer team, he suddenly clenched an invisible fist, forcibly drawing all the leaking energy back into his body. Huff, huff. He had almost become a monster that only pursued indulgence again. His tattered cloth-like body rose and fell violently as though he had just survived a life-and-death battle. If Lord Kyle saw him like this, he would definitely be disappointed. No. He had to control himself. He also wanted to have his own emotions, his own ideals. He did not want to be a monster that only fed on the spiritual emotions of others. Chaotic footsteps from the Noose gang echoed through the rain curtain, but they no longer stirred any emotional ripples within Iso's. Shadows surged forward like a tide, mercilessly sweeping across their bodies. There was no struggle, no sound. As if erased by an invisible rubber, they vanished without a trace. Soon, the thick darkness receded, and the streets returned to their dim state beneath the heavy rain as though nothing had ever happened. Ha ha ha. What a windfall. Those idiots from the Blood Hand Brotherhood hadn't even submitted their yearly tribute yet. Cooley grinned, blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. The sharp pain from the wound in his left arm caused his steps to stagger slightly. He limped toward the docks while biting down on a bandage and wrapping it around his arm. He hadn't expected the people left behind there to be quite so formidable. Even while poisoned, they still managed to injure him. But it doesn't matter. With his uninjured right hand, he touched the spatial pouch inside his coat. It was filled with magic crystals, jewels, and precious magical items. The sensation beneath his fingers made the smile on his face appear especially ferocious beneath the rain. With this capital, it wouldn't take him long to rise again. No, he would certainly do even better than before. The torrential rain had become perfect cover, ensuring no one noticed him. Even the vagrants hiding in various corners curled themselves tighter, afraid the cold rain might soak their last remaining clothes. After smoothly crossing nearly a quarter of the city through streets and alleys, Cooley reached the small fast boat he had prepared earlier at the dock. He raised the sail, untied the ropes, and cast one final glance at Coral Thorn City, the place where he had struggled for nearly 20 years through the curtain of rain. Then, without looking back, he plunged into the dark sea night. My lord, the task has been completed. Iso's hollow voice echoed through the karst cave as his figure slowly seeped out from the rock wall like spreading ink. Well done. Make preparations over the next few days. Also call back Alvaro and Montoya. In 3 days, I'll take you to explore a newly appeared secret realm. Kyle still stood silently before the coffin, occasionally adjusting the flow of energy within Adrian's new body. Yes, my lord. Burin's massive skeletal head tilted slightly toward the direction where Iso's had left. The ghostly flames in his eye sockets flickered uncertainly, filled with envy. His strength was only at the high master level, and his large body made him too easy to target. Missions that required exploration or combat were basically unrelated to him. Although he looked extremely mighty and domineering, among dark creatures he was actually one of the easiest to deal with. Seeing his child beginning to let his thoughts wander again, Kyle helplessly flicked the spider silk. Only then did Burin refocus on the task at hand. If you want to adventure with me, work hard to break through to the transcendent level and become a bone spider lord. By then your weakness will completely turn into an advantage. Combined with your talent for formations, you'll be a walking mobile fortress. My lord, I will definitely work hard. Burin's skeletal jaws clicked loudly. The blue flames burned like torches, illuminating the entire spiderweb formation a little brighter. Although Kyle himself was still some distance away from the transcendent level, that did not stop him from encouraging the child. Besides, he truly thought highly of Burin. Being able to independently control a transformation ritual formation at the master level, there were probably very few on the Kalar continent who could match such talent. However, raising a bone-bound spider consumed enormous resources. They ate tremendously yet grew painfully slowly, a classic gold devouring beast. Kyle could not help rubbing his forehead. Since he had picked it up himself, he would just have to raise it slowly. Early the next morning, the news that the 3 gang leaders of the Western District had collectively disappeared spread through the streets and alleys of Coral Thorn City like a whirlwind. The near-total destruction of the Poison Scorpion Gang and the Blood Hand Brotherhood became the hottest topic in the taverns of the slums. As the real controller behind the 3 major gangs, the Shadow Guild naturally dispatched large numbers of people to investigate. Yet the investigation results sent chills down everyone's spine. Aside from the headquarters of the Blood Hand Brotherhood, where signs of a fierce battle with an external intruder remained, the other missing individuals had seemingly vanished from the world without leaving a single clue. At the top floor of the most luxurious, Black Swan, hotel in the Western District. These are all the results of your investigation. Bettis, the vice president of the Coral Thorn City branch of the Shadow Guild, lounged lazily in a leather sofa. Her long legs rested casually on the solid wooden desk as she held a cigarette in one hand and flipped through the report submitted by her subordinate with the other. A masked subordinate dressed like a typical thief knelt on one knee and respectfully lowered his head. This subordinate has used all hidden channels. There are indeed no further discoveries. All right, you may leave. Bettis exhaled a ring of smoke. Yes, my lady. After casually flipping through a few more pages, she tossed the report onto the desk. The intelligence merchant. Bettis frowned slightly, her beautiful brows knitting together. What exactly is this lord trying to do? Any slightly thoughtful person would know that such a strange incident was absolutely related to extraordinary species. The most likely possibility was mysterious dark creatures. And the intelligence merchant, as the strongest dark creature in Coral Thorn City, no, even across several surrounding principalities, and the leader among dark creatures, must certainly be related to this incident. It might even have been carried out under his orders. This inevitably forced people to think about the deeper meaning behind it. After all, no one wanted to offend a true big shot. Although their major factions also had powerful figures backing them, for example, the branch president above her, if a fight really broke out, the unlucky ones would only be small fry like them who handled the work. As long as the other party acted within the rules, if anything went wrong, the blame would only fall on people like them below. Those high and mighty lords would never stand up for them. Moreover, for so many years everyone had cooperated quite pleasantly. The existence of the intelligence merchant had pushed Coral Thorn City's trade to its peak, and there was still potential for growth. Everyone earned enormous profits from it. Even the lowest, mud-legged laborers had spare money to buy wine and food. Because of that, all factions turned a blind eye to the intelligence merchant. After all, everyone was sharing the same meal, not smashing the rice bowl. No one would push away meat already in their mouth. Now the disappearance of the 3 gangs pointed directly toward the intelligence merchant. But the problem was that the 3 idiots had crossed the line first. Being killed in retaliation was nobody's fault but their own. What exactly were those 3 idiots trying to do? Rob a bankrupt adventurer team? What a bunch of worthless trash. And now they've been wiped out in one go. Leaving me to clean up your mess. Bettis flipped through the information related to the Rock Adventurer team, her brows tightening further. It seems this adventurer team not only clung to the intelligence merchant's support, but also connected with another mysterious powerhouse. Not simple. Although there was no detailed information about O'Brien, records of his meeting with Zack had been collected. But that was all. In a place full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers, intelligence gathering had to be done carefully. Offending a big shot would lead to consequences too terrible to imagine. Interesting. Her slender finger circled the name Rock Adventurer Team on the document. Looks like their value needs to be reassessed. The numbers on the loss report gave her slight relief. At least the core territory was still intact. But when she thought about answering the inquiries from the cunning elders at headquarters, she still could not help rubbing her forehead. Sigh, what a headache. Aboard the Wavecrest on the way to Coral Reef Island. A group of people huddled together beneath the edge of the cabin roof, watching Dean continue training in the heavy rain. He vomited like the end of the world last night, and he can still get up to practice swordsmanship this morning. TSK. That adaptability alone is impressive. Greg widened his eyes, gripping the waterproof cloak tightly to keep the rain from soaking everyone. No, it's that kid's willpower that's strong. Old Owen wiped the rain from his face and carefully observed the boy training in the storm. Didn't you see his face is still pale? He's obviously still seasick. That's true. This storm is rocking even me enough to feel uncomfortable. Boss Zack is still lying in bed like a pile of mud, vomiting bile. Vivian, who had just replaced Zack's bucket with a new one, strongly agreed. Anyone who can become the disciple of a big figure can't be simple. Just wonder what his other talents are like. Hey. Do you think we're witnessing the rise of a future big shot? Vivian suddenly proposed. Hiss dash. That makes sense. Old Owen's cloudy eyes suddenly lit up. Excited, he shoved aside the sailors behind him and rushed toward the resting room. Wait, I'm going to ask him for an autograph. When I retire later, I'll have something to brag about. Right. I want one too. 500 kilometers away from Coralthorn City lay a black swamp that was shrouded in poisonous mist all year round. ISO's figure slowly emerged from the shadows of the dense forest, his strip-like body rotating in the air as it looked around. Where is the entrance? His hollow voice echoed across the swamp. In his memory, the ancient tomb entrance engraved with runes had vanished without a trace, leaving only a few bone frogs poking their heads out of the putrid water before quickly diving back into the depths. The shadowy tendrils swayed irritably. Don't tell me those two guys swallowed the entire tomb. ISOs did not bother thinking further. Dark aura surged around him as his oppressive power spread outward. As long as those two were still within this region, they would definitely sense his presence. Sure enough, after only a moment, a metal gate dozens of meters tall shifted from illusion into reality and appeared out of thin air before ISOs. Rumble. As the metal gate slowly opened, two people walked out from the eerie tomb passage behind it. On the left stood a tall figure completely encased in ancient metal armor, with strands of black mist and baleful aura seeping from the gaps of the armor. On the right floated a mass of thick black-red blood mist, with golden runes occasionally flashing within it. ISOs. Alvaro's voice came from beneath the visor, carrying a metallic reverberation. Does the Lord have a task? Montoya's blood mist body suddenly churned violently. A thought like a sharp needle stabbed into both their minds. The smell of flesh. ISOs. Did you bring something delicious? Give it to me, quickly. As he spoke, the blood mist transformed into a giant serpent and lunged toward ISOs, only to be instantly trapped by a golden rune cage condensed in Alvaro's palm. ZZZ. Montoya smoked as the golden runes scorched him, and the blood mist violently churned before shrinking into a tight mass. Sorry, ISOs. He still can't control his desires very well. Huff. After struggling for a while, Montoya finally regained his sanity and complained, ISOs. Did you come here on purpose just to watch me make a fool of myself? Bringing so much blood food to tempt me. ISO's pitch-black head split open again with an exaggerated crack. Definitely not on purpose. But seeing you embarrass yourself still makes me very happy. As he spoke, ISOs dumped those gang members who had basically become vegetative onto the ground in front of Montoya, almost causing him to lose control again. Damn it. UXXXX. Montoya sent out a thought filled with contempt and a large amount of foul language before slowly expanding his body and swallowing all of them. ISOs, it seems you can already effectively control your emotions and will. You shouldn't be far from breaking through to intent, right? Alvaro's metallic voice echoed within the tomb passage. ISO's torn strip-like body trembled slightly, and a hint of suppressed excitement appeared in his hollow voice. Just a little more, but after this mission, it might be enough. He turned toward Montoya, his shadowy tendrils swaying provocatively. Once I advance, among the three of us you'll be the only one who hasn't reached intent. Tisk, what are you so proud of? Even if you break through, you're still just a runner, he, Montoya mocked mercilessly. Iso suddenly froze, as if his throat had been caught. He truly could not refute that. His abilities mainly lay in stealth, strangeness, and speed. Dealing with opponents at the same level was fine, but compared to freaks like the two of them who could fight above their level, he was far inferior. Alright, enough. Tell us, what mission does the Lord have? Alvaro interrupted the conversation before it drifted even further off topic. The Lord plans to take us to explore a newly appeared secret realm in 3 days. We're to prepare in advance. A secret realm? Did the Lord say what kind of secret realm it is? No. Alright. I understand. I'll prepare, and then you can take us away. After speaking, Alvaro placed his arm on the metal gate. The massive gate and the dark tomb passage behind it slowly vanished together. You really swallowed this ancient tomb? Isos asked in surprise. Yes. It has basically been refined and merged into my domain. Hiss dash. Then your current strength shouldn't be weaker than the Lord's, right? I don't know. I've never seen the Lord's true strength. After the metal gate completely disappeared, Alvaro's metal helmet turned toward Isos. Let's go. Isos nodded. Shadows wrapped around the three of them, and they disappeared into the swamp forest. Ha! These idiots really want to attack the Greenfield trade route? Mill's eyes widened as he stared in disbelief at the formal letter sent by the president of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce headquarters. What benefits did they offer to make the president agree to this? Originally, he had planned to see what conclusion those people would reach. But when he went there, he discovered that everyone had already left. Then the next day, he received this letter transmitted through an expensive communication magic array telling him not to interfere with those people. Mills grabbed a crystal cup and gulped down a mouthful of chilled grape wine. So they're not even pretending anymore, didn't even bother asking for my opinion. He stared at the flamboyant signature at the end of the letter, anger rising in his chest. So it seems that in the eyes of the headquarters, my royal collateral bloodline and years of hard work carry less weight than the money bags of slave traders. Since you insist on jumping into the fire pit, don't blame me for pouring oil on the flames. Once you smash your heads bloody against the wall, let's see how you, Mr. President, explain it to the Council of Elders. Someone. President. The secretary, who had been waiting for a long time, pushed open the door and entered. Immediately issue an announcement in my name. Starting today, the Coral Thorn branch of the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce will suspend all cooperation with the Duke's Mansion of Coral Thorn City and the local nobles led by the Blackthorn family. All of their actions and intentions have nothing to do with us. The secretary's hand holding the feather pen trembled slightly. And my lord, will the headquarters hold us accountable for this? Humph. This is nothing. Mills did not care at all. This was something he had planned to do anyway, only now the separation would be more thorough. He grabbed a quill pen and swiftly wrote several lines on parchment. Then he sneered at the secretary. Go purchase all types of healing potions and related medicinal materials circulating on the market. Buy as much as possible. Remove all of our own from the shelves. Yes, my lord. And those bits of dirt about the Duke's mansion and the nobles, send some of it to their opposing forces through the Shadow Guild's channels. Yes, my lord. The secretary looked at the president as if wanting to say something but ultimately swallowed the words. With a head full of questions, he quickly left to carry out the orders. After the secretary left, Mills interlocked his fingers and began thinking about the issues he needed to pay attention to after completely falling out with them. He was not worried about his personal safety. No matter what, he still possessed royal blood, and his mother, Princess Elena, was still alive. Of course, if someone truly went mad and tried to take revenge on him, there was nothing he could do about it. But swallowing this humiliation quietly was absolutely impossible. What he was most worried about now was that if the Greenfield trade route were truly destroyed, the contract between the Treyant clan and the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce would completely collapse. Coral Thorn City would also lose an important trade route, leading to economic decline, and the commercial network he had painstakingly built would crumble along with it. It seemed he would have to consult with that intelligence merchant again. Perhaps that person could provide a more reliable solution. Big news. Have you heard? Heard what? The Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce branch in Coral Thorn City has fallen out with the headquarters. Even the Duke's mansion and a large number of nobles have been put on the blacklist. Hiss. That ruthless? Offending so many people in one go. Are these lords preparing to start a war? Of course. And there's something even more explosive. What? There's something even bigger. Merchant groups of various races somehow obtain detailed intelligence about some of their caravans being hijacked. The Elven merchant group even discovered enslaved elves in the underground black market. Now the elders of several races have already stormed into the Duke's mansion. Is that real? How could something this huge happen without any commotion? Isn't it obvious? Some big shot must be suppressing the news. I only heard it from a friend working in the wealthy district. The streets over there are extremely quiet now. Those noble lords are probably hiding in their homes and don't dare show their faces. Has that damn fat man gone mad? Willie Blackthorn's face turned ashen as he listened to the intelligence report from his subordinate. They had already given that dead fat man plenty of face. Even the matter of the Greenfield trade route had been approved by the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce headquarters. Even if something went wrong, the responsibility wouldn't fall on that fat man's head. What else could he possibly be dissatisfied with? Yet that fat man had pounced like a rabid dog and started biting people without any warning. Was his desire for revenge really that strong? Completely incomprehensible. Go. Gather the other families and the Duke's mansion. Forget it, leave the Duke's mansion aside for now. Just have the representatives of the other families come. Going to the Duke's mansion now would simply mean inviting more trouble onto himself. Kyle was also astonished by how quickly the situation had developed. Did that fat man take the wrong medicine? When did his courage become fatter than his waistline? Is he tired of living? What Kyle did not know was that the intelligence he had provided along with the existence of him and O'Brien had caused Mills to grow somewhat overconfident. Combined with the anger of being ignored and long-suppressed dissatisfaction, it had finally erupted, flipping the entire table. At this moment, Kyle still had no idea that the fat man was planning to consult him about how to resolve the trouble with the Greenfield trade route. Otherwise, he would definitely have checked whether the fat man's brain had been eaten by mind-devouring worms. You offend everyone first, and then ask him how to solve it. This time, those old fellows behind the scenes probably won't be able to sit still anymore. Mills, you fat man really know how to stir up trouble. Fortunately, several of his capable subordinates were now present, and the strongest among them, Alvaro, had given him quite a pleasant surprise. ISOs, Kyle's voice echoed through the vast cavern, come take over my position. Just stabilize Adrian's current state for me. I'm going to deal with some trouble. Yes, my lord, a hollow voice responded from the shadows. Alvaro, come with me. As you command, my lord. At the top of the tallest tower in the center of Coral Thorn City. Howling winds whipped past 5 silent figures. Below them, the city lights flickered in the storm like an uneasy sea of stars. Kyle's figure silently appeared at the edge of the tower. You're here. Kyle's gaze swept across the 5 figures waiting atop the tower. Yeah. If I didn't come soon, you'd probably explode. What's going on with that dead fat man? This shouldn't be your doing, right? Sarkad Blackthorn's cold face showed no expression, but his tone was chilling. Of course not. I'm not crazy. This incident has had a very bad impact. How do you plan to handle it? Claudie Haynes was clearly dissatisfied. His family's main business was the trade of people, and Mill's exposure had brought enormous trouble to his family, especially from the elves. Are you questioning me? Kyle's expression also turned cold. All right. Everyone calm down. We're all respectable figures here. Whatever the issue, we can discuss it slowly. Robert Zorn quickly interrupted with a smile, preventing the atmosphere from worsening. Robert, your shadow guild spread the news everywhere and fanned the flames, and now you're pretending to be the good guy. Bartis, whose face bore a massive claw scar, sneered. His deep-sea union's intelligence related to plundering and smuggling had been completely sold out. If he didn't lack an obvious base, the place being surrounded wouldn't be the Duke's mansion. Robert Zorn's smile faded slightly, but he still maintained his composure. My subordinates were careless. As their superior, I can only try to act as a mediator. Let's talk about how to deal with the matter first. If we don't come up with a solution soon, the Duke's mansion will probably be torn apart today. The Duke's mansion served as an important buffer that maintained surface-level order and eased conflicts among all parties. If it disappeared, finding another suitable replacement wouldn't be easy. Everyone's gaze once again focused on Kyle. After all, everyone present knew very well that the fat man counted as Kyle's person. Although the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce itself was powerful, its true influence was mainly in the imperial capital. In Coral Thorn City, these local powerhouses were the real rulers. Without Kyle's intervention, the Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce would never have reached its current position. Facing everyone's gaze, Kyle slowly spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it clearly carried over the howling wind. What Mills did this time was indeed excessive, but that doesn't mean it brings no benefits. Benefits? The others remained non-committal, waiting for him to continue. Since everything has already been dragged into the open, then we'll resolve it openly. If Coral Thorn City wants to continue developing, if it wants to become the true center of the Silver Sand Coast and even a broader region, instead of a filthy gold devouring den, then some things must be cut away. Kyle glanced toward Claudio Haynes and Bartis. The population of Coral Thorn City is already large enough. Bringing in more low-level laborers is useless. These black industries will only limit the city's potential. The petty profits they bring are insignificant compared to the chaos, hatred, and potential destruction they bring to the city. Kyle looked around at everyone, his tone icy. What this city needs is order, safety, prosperity, and genuine attraction. It needs an environment where merchants, craftsmen, and scholars of all races can settle and develop in peace. Not more bloodshed, fear, and endless revenge. Originally, he had planned to slowly dig out these tumors after O'Brien entered the Artisans Association. Unexpectedly, Mills had detonated everything ahead of time. Human plans truly could not match the unpredictability of fate. Since things had already reached this point, then everything should be made completely clear. If you still cling to those rotten, foul-smelling chains of benefits and refuse to let them go, then as this city inevitably expands and upgrades, the contradictions will only deepen. An outbreak of conflict will only be a matter of time. When that time comes, either take your filthy profits and get out of Coral Thorn City, or wait for this city to be smashed into ruins amid complete chaos and fighting. There will be no third outcome. After those words fell, only the howling rainstorm remained atop the tower. The few people present all fell into silence. Those are matters for the future. Let's first talk about how to resolve the current problem. It was Robert who broke the silence first. He pointed toward the Duke's mansion in the east, a trace of worry flashing in his eyes. As the representative of the Shadow Guild, he least wanted to see the situation spiral out of control that would affect business. Several powerful auras were already colliding uncontrollably above the Duke's mansion. The pressure of the elders from various races and the experts serving the Duke's mansion formed visible torrents of energy, tearing and crashing against each other in the storm. That depends on whether everyone here is willing to part with those blood-stained coins in your hands. Hand over a few scapegoats with enough weight, publicly try the scum involved in the slave trade and the hijacking of caravans, and pay sufficient compensation, the situation might still be calmed. Kyle spoke leisurely. He knew these people's nature well. Those words were merely an opening. Of course, with the prestige of everyone present, the various races should give at least some face, right? Ha! You're quite good at spending other people's money. Bartis sneered, the knotted muscles beneath his leather armor bulging. His murderous aura almost condensed into substance. Did you forget that this whole mess was started by that dead fat man? And now you want me to cut off my own limbs to apologize to a bunch of beggars? Claudie Haynes and Sarkad Blackthorn also looked at Kyle with dissatisfaction, though they still maintained a nobleman's grace and did not explode in anger. Looks like you're unwilling to part with it. Kyle raised an eyebrow, deliberately dragging out his tone while showing an expression of, just as I expected. A performance had to be done properly. Then only one path remains. He lazily stretched his body. His bones cracked softly, and his golden eyes shone brilliantly through the rain. Let's fight. We'll decide with our fists who will write the future direction of Coralthorn City. Wait. This is your solution. Gan Cole, who had been silent until now, finally could not hold back. As the branch president of the Adventurers Guild, he could not just watch a group of high-level powerhouses start fighting inside the city. The consequences were unimaginable. Kyle understood his concerns, but sometimes violence was the most effective language. Of course. Since no one wants to pay with their benefits, then we'll declare it with force so everyone can calm down. Interesting. Bardas licked his lips, bloodthirsty light flashing in his eyes. You want to fight the three of us? Ha, of course. Kyle couldn't suppress the upward curl of his lips. He had wanted to vent for a long time. Today he had finally found the chance. I've tolerated you for a long time. I've wanted to stretch my muscles for ages. But since I'm here for long-term benefits and we all want to make money in harmony, let's stop at the point of victory. How about that? Kyle paused slightly. I doubt anyone wants us to end up mutually crippled and let outsiders take advantage, right? The terms. Blackthorn narrowed his eyes, his shrewd gaze examining the unfathomable vampire before him. Simple. If you win, I'll compensate all your losses and withdraw from the struggle over the core interests of Coralthorn City. The Silver Moon Chamber of Commerce will also resume cooperation with all parties. But if I win, we'll bear our own losses. Bardas interrupted impatiently. Kyle shook his head. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried unquestionable authority. Not enough. You must also abandon the slave trade and the business of raiding trade routes. He stared at Bardas. Only then is it fair. Heh. Blackthorn let out a meaningful chuckle and lightly tapped his cane against the ground. It seems you're very confident. Everyone present had clashed with Kyle before, but those encounters had only been probing tests. They had never truly fought seriously. Fight me and you'll know. I'm just afraid you won't dare, Kyle mocked lazily. Everyone here had experienced storms and waves countless times. This level of provocation could not stir even the slightest ripple in their hearts. The three exchanged glances and began communicating with their spiritual power. What do you think of his proposal? Sarkad asked first. This vampire truly has unusual foresight and talent. The changes in Coralthorn City over these years prove it. If we follow his idea, the city could rise to another level. Giving up some benefits isn't really a problem, Claudio replied. I think it's feasible too. The losses would be greater, but still acceptable. Sarkad turned to Bardas. Humph. Easy for you two to say. My entire foundation is at sea. Abandon plundering. Unless my losses are compensated elsewhere. Bardas, are you pretending to be miserable? The Silver Sand Coast is such a vast sea. How many sea bandits and merchant ships are under your control? Do you think we don't know? You've already made a fortune from maritime trade these years. If you completely turn to legal commerce, how much would you actually lose? Is earning less the same as losing? Besides, once legitimate trade grows large enough, those losses will return in the blink of an eye. And you really believe he can push Coralthorn City to a higher level? If the city's profits keep increasing, it might attract even more wolves. At that time, transcendent even legendary experts might step in. What will you do then? The two were momentarily stunned by Bardas' question. Yes, if stronger figures set their sights on Coralthorn City, what would these local powers do? Suddenly they felt that the current situation wasn't so bad. There were ample profits, yet it didn't attract stronger competitors. They decided to ask the vampire directly. How will you ensure that once Coralthorn City grows stronger, it won't be coveted by others? Kyle rolled his eyes and spoke in a tone one would use when worrying about an idiot. So you really plan to monopolize a piece of meat you can't even defend? What do you mean? You want to share the benefits with outsiders? Kyle was completely speechless. Were these people all greedy beasts? You all know that a bigger metropolis will attract outsiders' covetousness. Then why not actively seek suitable, powerful partners to help guard this cake together? If you want greater profits, you must learn to share. Cooperate. Achieve mutual benefit. New partners are new competitors but also new protectors. Unless you really intend to cling to this piece of meat until it completely rots. If that's truly your plan, then there's nothing left to discuss. It doesn't align with my interests at all. I can't be bothered with your nonsense anyway. I'm not the one who will suffer losses. If you have the guts, go kill that fat man. Don't make me look down on you. Silence filled the air once again. Kyle looked at them with disdain. A bunch of idiots who were both incompetent and overly ambitious. Back then, he had chosen this place precisely because of these people's short-sightedness and their relative adherence to rules. With them standing in front, he could develop more comfortably behind the scenes. But now he already had some confidence. He could act more freely. It likely wouldn't take him long to advance to Duke and become transcendent. At that point he would truly be counted among the top-tier powerhouses on this continent. And these people before him? They would probably remain trapped at the intent level forever. Unless they encountered extraordinary fortune or belonged to special races like magical creatures or dark beings that could advance after meeting certain specific conditions. For ordinary people to achieve transcendent, they had to break through the shackles of their own mind and convictions, forging a unique path on their professional journey. If Kyle had wanted, he could have advanced to Duke 30 years ago through the vampire's most traditional path, the path of blood and darkness. Yet he had deliberately delayed until now, finally making progress on a new path more suited to himself. It wasn't that new paths couldn't be developed after advancement. But advancing to transcendent was a transformation of one's life essence, like a chrysalis becoming a butterfly. It would determine whether one was better suited to flying in the sky or swimming in the sea. The choice of path had immense influence on the future. Once the direction was set, subsequent development could only proceed in similar directions and domains, greatly limiting possibilities. Unless one paid a terrible price and completely destroyed and rebuilt oneself. But even then, it would still be better to plan and choose a direction before the butterfly transformation, avoiding meaningless waste. Have you thought it through yet? Kyle said impatiently. If you keep dragging this out, the Duke's mansion might really start fighting. I support it. This crisp and decisive declaration startled everyone present. No one had expected the first to take a side would be the previously silent Gan Cole. However, it was not too surprising. After all, no matter how this city developed, the status of the Adventurers Guild would never change. As the largest and loosest force on this continent and even across other continents, although it possessed no authority in decision-making or governance, its branches spread everywhere and its vast network of connections made it a presence no power dared to underestimate. Gan Cole was a pure adventurer. Only because he had grown older did he come to Coral Thorn City to settle down and retire. Normally he lived like the elderly men strolling along the streets, relaxed and carefree, occasionally telling children stories of adventures or giving novice adventurers some guidance. Among those present, his attitude toward Kyle was the best. As an adventurer who had traveled far and wide, he had encountered countless non-human beings and had cooperated with many of them. Thus he could view the matter more rationally. Having come from the very bottom of society himself, he had little fondness for these decaying nobles and bandits. If Kyle could push forward reforms in Coral Thorn City and free it from corruption and chaos, he was naturally willing to support it. Robert Zorn, however, was now completely at a loss. Although Kyle's words never once mentioned their Shadow Guild, every sentence seemed to stab straight at them. What did the Shadow Guild do? Assassination. Theft. All kinds of underground intelligence and shady dealings. They were also the true leaders behind numerous gangs. Just listen to what he was saying. Ending the rotten, foul-smelling chains of interests. And those words were spoken by a dark creature everyone shouted to kill. Without people like them doing the dirty work, where would all you dark creatures even come from? He simply could not understand how such words could come from the mouth of a vampire. It was as absurd as a holy paladin declaring they would embrace darkness. Yet he truly did not know how to express his stance. As someone who had walked in the shadows for years, not taking sides had become an instinct. Even if he was extremely unwilling in his heart, he could still forcibly suppress the impulse. Now he could only wait and see how the other three representatives, those who truly held decision-making power in Coralthorn City, would respond. Among Sarkad Blackthorn and the other two, differences of opinion had already appeared regarding Kyle's proposal. Sarkad and Claudie, who both valued the future of their families, leaned toward agreement. The former believed they could accept it, while the latter did not oppose it but required time to adjust the structure of his family's industries. Bardas, however, was completely unwilling, asking him to push his capable subordinates to their deaths. Impossible. As the argument grew more intense, the three men's spiritual powers clashed violently. An invisible energy field collided and surged between them. The aura around their bodies could no longer remain perfectly restrained like suppressed volcanoes finally finding an outlet, they erupted. Boom dash. Three completely different yet equally immense intent-level pressures shot into the sky. Their colliding momentum quickly spread across more than half the city, even dispersing the chaotic energy currents above the Duke's mansion. Kyle was briefly startled by the sudden burst of their auras. Then a strong curiosity surged up. Oh. What exactly did those three talk about? Arguing this fiercely? They've started fighting among themselves already. Inside the Duke's mansion, the tense and anxious atmosphere eased slightly because of the sudden change. Everyone turned their gaze toward the tallest tower in the city center. The violent aura had blasted a huge hole through the cloud-covered sky. Dazzling sunlight poured straight down through the opening, illuminating the center of the city like a pillar of light reaching the heavens. Who? Duke Edmund Tide let out a long breath. Although he was also a master-level knight, the pressure from so many grandmaster-level auras had made him extremely uncomfortable. If those big shots pulling the strings behind the scenes had not intervened soon, he feared he might have embarrassed himself on the spot. Edmund's mood was extremely foul. If this blasted title of Duke had not been forcibly granted by the Empire, he truly would not have come to this cursed place. The duchies along the Silver Sand Coast attracted far too many powerful individuals due to their enormous trade networks. For the sake of the benefits here, those people were even willing to sit down together and jointly develop the region. The result was that dukes like him had basically become puppets, rulers in name only. Yet all the dirty and troublesome work still fell on them. They even had to clean up the messes for these local tyrants. In the end, they gained nothing. Just like today. These matters had little to do with him in the first place, but because he was the nominal ruler, he had been blocked inside the council hall by angry merchant groups from various races and treated like a punching bag. Worst of all, he did not even dare to sell out those big shots. He could only grit his teeth and stall for time. Fortunately, those people had finally stepped in, though their method of intervention was somewhat baffling. The masterminds behind the scenes have finally appeared. The elven elder gazed at the golden pillar of light piercing through the clouds, a trace of confusion flashing across her blue eyes. Just from the revealed aura alone, there were three sources and all were clearly high-level intent. According to the intelligence she had gathered, however, the ruling powers of this city were far more than just three families. Intent-level figures were absolute upper-tier powers anywhere. Even among the elves, who controlled several continents, their numbers were limited. It was rare for a single top-tier metropolis to have several intent-level beings appear simultaneously. It seemed they had encountered some disagreement. The only question was whether this dispute concerned the merchant caravans of various races demanding an explanation or if it stemmed from some other issue. The elders of the other races also stared solemnly at the distant tower. Although the aura was clearly not directed at them, if intent-level beings fought at such close range, it would be difficult for them to protect the younger members they had brought along. So you two are really determined to follow that vampire down a dark path to the end? Bardas abruptly cut off the spiritual link and spoke aloud. Everyone here is intelligent. There's no need to emphasize such a question again and again, Sarkad replied with clear dissatisfaction. That bastard Bardas had actually called the two of them spineless traitors who would sell out their own meritorious subordinates. Enjoying the best resources the family can offer, yet accomplishing nothing. Now that the family needs them to step forward and take responsibility, it is their honor and the only value useless people have. Or perhaps the fearsome reputation of the blood shark predator was earned through the kindness of a soft heart. Now you're pretending to care about your subordinates. For the families of Sarkad and Claudie, pushing out a few direct descendants who wasted resources to take the blame was hardly a problem. Sacrificing several useless family members to calm public anger, in exchange for long-term benefits and the future Kyle had promised, this was a worthwhile trade. In this world where the strong devoured the weak, even nobles had to be prepared to sacrifice themselves for the family at any time. Not to mention those direct descendants who squandered family resources while contributing nothing. Either take nothing and venture out on your own, or if you accepted the family's benefits, be prepared to be sacrificed. As for finding outsiders to serve as scapegoats, that trick did not work well in this transcendent world. No one was stupid. Fooling ordinary people might work, but fooling the elders of the various races, who were also transcendents. If that happened, it would no longer be merchant caravan elders coming to demand answers. Powerhouses from all races would come personally to seek an explanation. And at that point, the matter could no longer be settled by killing a few useless people. A real explanation would have to be given. Bardas now looked like a lone wolf separated from the pack. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for him. The reason he opposed so strongly was naturally not only because he did not want his subordinates to take the blame. It was also because the internal power structure of the Deep Sea Union was completely different from that of noble families. As a pirate group, his authority was built entirely upon bloody suppression and the distribution of profits. If he truly followed Kyle's proposal and handed over capable subordinates as scapegoats, it would not only chill the hearts of his men but also shake the very foundation of his rule, where the strong stood above the weak. What right would a weak leader who compromised with outsiders have to command them? The Deep Sea Union would probably fall apart very quickly. I can accept no longer plundering merchant caravans, but I cannot accept the demand to hand over my subordinates as scapegoats, Bardas said bluntly, turning his gaze toward Kyle. He was not foolish enough to completely tear his face with everyone present. That's not something you should say to me, but to the merchant caravans that were plundered by your Deep Sea Union. Kyle could not care less how Bardas negotiated with those caravans, he only wanted results. As long as you can offer compensation that satisfies all races, how you handle it is your own business. If you're unwilling to pay even that price, then why should you enjoy the benefits brought by Coralthorn City's development? Of course, if you can defeat me, then you naturally won't have to pay those costs. Kyle looked at Bardas with amusement. So, want to have a fight? Bardas knew he had already retreated as far as he could. He could only agree reluctantly. Today's account would have to be settled another day. Fine. How do you want to fight? Wait. Robert could no longer sit still. After all, that was the most unfortunate one, actually him, the bystander. These people still had the option of changing professions, but what about him? Pack up and leave? Impossible. Kyle, your proposal is naturally good for Coralthorn City, but the foundation of the Shadow Guild, if we lose these traditional businesses, how are we supposed to survive? Although Robert did not state it explicitly, everyone understood his meaning. Bardas, Sarkad, and Claudie looked at Robert with strange expressions. The three of them had argued for so long, yet only now did they realize that after all the fuss, the most anxious person was not any of their three factions. It was this entertainment seeker who had come to watch the show. Kyle was also stunned he had actually overlooked this man. The dealings of the Shadow Guild had taken dirty work to the extreme. If the others could be considered tumors, then the Shadow Guild was a chronic disease, one that was extremely difficult to eradicate. According to his original plan, the dark side of society could gradually be squeezed out until such soil of crime slowly disappeared. But now it seemed that might not be possible. You damned fatso. Once I finish dealing with these people, I'll squeeze some oil out of that fat of yours and use it for sky lanterns. But since everything had already been laid bare, the Shadow Guild would also have to change. Yet this was far from simple. Although the Shadow Guild was not as powerful as the Adventurers Guild, it was still an organization spanning several continents. The Shadow Guild branch in Coralthorn City controlled even more black and gray industrial chains than Bardus and the others combined, and the profits were terrifying. Kyle had no doubt that the Shadow Guild was actually the richest force in Coralthorn City. As for who exploited the poor the most aside from imperial taxes, it was the gangs collecting protection fees. They were the true culprits who squeezed the last drop of oil from the lowest classes. Kyle frowned slightly. For a moment, he truly could not think of a suitable solution. After all, who would bother planning a future for a group of social scum destined to be eliminated? Just thinking about it made him feel nauseated. Giving those decaying nobles a chance to change professions was already troublesome enough. Did he also have to care about the survival of these parasites? As for giving them a chance to reform? What a joke. Would a group of parasites even more vampiric than vampires honestly go out and work? Impossible. Given his temperament, he would rather these scum went to hell sooner. And not just metaphorically, literally hell. To wander forever in purgatory for all eternity, that was the destination they deserved. But the situation now placed him in a dilemma. These people were willing to cooperate largely because he could bring enormous profits. If he let go and ignored them, there was no need to think these hyenas would immediately launch a counterattack. He was not afraid of them. But the commercial network and stable situation he had painstakingly built over many years would likely be destroyed. That was what pained him the most. As a dark creature, establishing one's own legitimate public forces was extremely difficult. He did not want to become a monster forever living in the shadows. As for becoming an absolute powerhouse first and then building forces afterward, that was pure fantasy. No powerhouse emerged by blindly stumbling forward. Without great opportunities, immense perseverance, and sufficient resources, everything was just wishful thinking. Moreover, his path itself was one of challenging the impossible and surpassing his own limits. In his previous life, he had loved a 4-character poem written by a great figure. To struggle with heaven, endless joy. To struggle with earth, endless joy. To struggle with people, endless joy. Those words constantly influenced him, serving as the source of his belief and the guiding light when facing all difficulties. Robert, the transformation of the Shadow Guild is indeed tricky. I don't have a good solution either. Kyle's golden pupils gleamed even more brilliantly under the sunlight. What you are best at is intelligence and special services, but those all belong to black industries. If you switch to legitimate fields like security or information consulting, the profits would be far lower than now. I'm afraid you would never willingly give them up. So I won't beat around the bush. In the future blueprint I envision, black industry chains are absolutely targets for eradication, and gray industries must also be strictly controlled. Only then can Coralthorn City truly transform into a prosperous, orderly, and vibrant trade capital. So that means you intend to become an enemy of the Shadow Guild? Robert no longer maintained his usual smile. His expression grew extremely gloomy, and his aura surged outward, faintly overwhelming the other three. Bardus and the others had not expected Robert to have hidden himself so deeply. His true strength was probably already approaching transcendent, perhaps he was already transcendent. Kyle was slightly surprised. He had not expected Robert to expose himself so directly. Naturally, he was well aware of the strength of everyone present. After all, he was not arrogant enough to cooperate with outsiders without first understanding their capabilities. But when he felt the killing intent coming from the other side, Kyle's golden pupils slowly transformed before everyone into 2 blood moons radiating ominous aura for the first time. The dark energy surrounding his body also grew increasingly intense. Robert, Kyle, do not cause trouble, but I am not afraid of it either. Kyle's expression was as calm as still water, his gaze cold and deep. If you don't give me an explanation today, then even if I must sacrifice the decades of foundations of Coralthorn City, I will still make sure that you are the one who stays behind here. No one had expected the situation to change so quickly. Kyle had not yet released his own aura and was still trying to restrain himself. But in secret, he had already issued an order to Alvaro, who was hidden within a spatial rift. Leave. Inside the Duke's mansion, the elders of all races suddenly changed expressions. That newly rising, undisguised killing intent pierced into everyone's souls like tangible icicles. Without the slightest hesitation, they decisively turned into streaks of light with their subordinates and fled this dangerous place at the fastest possible speed. At the same time, the entire Coral Thorn city fell into unprecedented panic. All professionals in the city, whether tavern mercenaries, guild adventurers, or private soldiers of noble houses, now shared only a single thought. Run! Like startled birds and beasts, they desperately circulated their battle chi, magic power, or bloodline strength, rushing toward the nearest city gates or ports. This new aura had already become a clear signal. In the past, even when powerful individuals fought within the city, such terrifying killing intent had never appeared. This clearly meant that a powerhouse had truly become enraged. No one dared gamble on whether staying would still be safe. Escaping with their lives was the priority. As for ordinary people, they had already collapsed to the ground, even breathing becoming difficult. They could only curl up in the deepest corners of their homes, trembling in fear and praying that disaster would not descend upon them. The spiritual powers of Bardis, Sarkad, and Claudie instantly linked again, this time also including Gan, Cole. Damn it! Didn't we agree to keep it under control? This looks like they're about to tear the city apart. Bardis roared furiously through the mental link. How the hell should I know? Transcendent. Absolutely transcendent. Damn it. Robert hit himself this deeply. What do we do now? Retreat? Sarkad could no longer maintain his noble composure. Retreat? If we retreat now, those two will probably start fighting the next second. If we stay here, they might still have some restraint. If we leave, Coral Thorn City will probably disappear in the blink of an eye. Gan, Cole hurriedly stopped that dangerous idea. The veteran adventurer's body was tense. His experience told him that any rash movement at this moment could become the spark that ignited everything. Then what do we do? Just stand here and watch. That Robert usually pretends to be such a nice old man, but now he flips his face faster than flipping a book. Bardis struggled to keep the mental link stable. He happened to be standing between Robert and Kyle, making him the most uncomfortable one present. Hold on. At least wait until our people have mostly evacuated. If we can stall even a little time, then that's something. Claudie glanced toward the direction of his family's estate. Even though it was several kilometers away and hidden behind the rain curtain, he could still clearly see the crowds fleeing in panic through the downpour. Robert's expression flickered uncertainly. The energy surging around him was as oppressive as the sea before a storm. He had miscalculated. He had never expected Kyle to be this uncompromising. Originally, he thought revealing his transcendent level strength would force Kyle to back down. But he had never imagined the response would be such an ironclad stance, even one that seemed ready to drag both sides down together. And judging from the situation, the other party even seemed confident he could make Robert stay here. What arrogance! Could this guy also be transcendent? Or did he have some other hidden trump card? He dared not gamble. Robert had investigated Kyle's background before. Although the man's true identity remained unclear, he was almost certainly a member of some reclusive ancient family. No one knew what kind of foundations those long-surviving ancient families possessed. In the end, it was still his own impulsiveness. After hearing Kyle's grand speech, he had actually believed that the man might truly be some idealist who pitted all living beings. Yet he had forgotten that this vampire's foothold in Coral Thorn City had never come from lofty rhetoric but from unfathomable strength and ruthless decisiveness. But now the arrow was already on the string and had to be released. Kyle had made it very clear, in the future of Coral Thorn City, there would be no place for the Shadow Guild. As the highest controller of the Shadow Guild here, both enormous profits and the organization's dignity prevented him from bowing his head. Either he found a way to transform the guild's operations, or he flipped the table entirely. As for asking the rest of the guild for help, would it matter? This vampire clearly had no intention of letting them play along. Just as he hesitated, the surrounding light suddenly dimmed in an instant. Many adventurers fled while secretly watching the changes around the central tower. But only moments after that murderous aura spread across the entire city, a horrifying sight appeared before their eyes. An ancient and heavy metal gate suddenly appeared in the sky. The opened metal doors were like the gaping maw of an abyss. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of meters tall central tower was swallowed from top to bottom. The four oppressive auras above everyone's heads vanished together with the tower, disappearing without a trace. A domain. Several well-informed Grandmaster-level experts cried out in shock. That was a domain possessed only by legendary powerhouses. Wait, no. How could such a place possibly have a legendary powerhouse? If it was not a legendary powerhouse, then there was only one possibility. A legendary creature. A very small number of extraordinary lifeforms were born with transcendent traits. This allowed them to possess terrifying innate abilities far beyond their own realm. Those terrifying beings who could wield legendary-level abilities without reaching the legendary realm were known as legendary creatures. What kind of dragon's lair is this place? It even has a legendary creature. And one with space-type abilities, one of the strongest among domains. This place is not safe to stay in. This old man will take his leave first. What are you afraid of? It's obviously not targeting us. Then you stay. Everyone else looked at him like he was an idiot and fled even faster. Caitlyn, once again wrapped in a black cloak, followed the fleeing crowd while anxiously watching the direction where the tower had disappeared. She vaguely felt that this matter had something to do with her younger brother. But she was only a Viscount, master level. After enduring the pressure of those several terrifying auras just now, she was already feeling dizzy. Sigh. Caitlyn could not help but sigh inwardly. It felt as though those relaxed and happy days of the past were drifting further and further away. Damn those werewolves. Robert and the others were also shocked by the sudden change. Everyone's aura surged to its peak in an instant. Kyle. What is the meaning of this? Are you planning to make enemies of all of us? Sarkad's furious roar exploded within the dead silence of darkness, carrying both the rage of being deceived and a faint trace of fear. Within the endless darkness, only the violent torrents of energy surrounding the few of them shone. But even the light seemed to be constantly swallowed. Even the ground beneath their feet could only barely be seen. Sigh. Kyle's voice echoed from all directions. It carried a trace of helplessness, yet was as cold as the polar wind, wandering endlessly within the silent darkness. Gentlemen. I too didn't want things to come to this.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.